No, I didn't like what they said, but that's their opinion. I didn't like that. Not a deal breaker, but we haven't spoken to Canada today. He's called, and we'll see.
Wonder what is it that he's going to say in terms of sort of how the administration at least is feeling. You got some sense of that from Trump, but his Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was on with Fox Business News talking about Canada and about
we're going to recognize the Palestinian state. I mean, and you're throwing your hat in the ring from Canada. Come on.
Let's get everybody who's in this show right now over there. Open up another tab and subscribe to Mark Nixon. Let's get those numbers even higher. He deserves everything that he's getting, and he deserves more. Absolutely. I think he's just a fantastic. What am I buffering? This is crazy. Am I being taken down? I'm going to hit refresh on this page. Is it frozen for everybody? Is it good? Where are we doing? Are we good? Is okay. It was buffering on my thing now. Okay, that's better. We're good. We're back. Right as I'm giving a shout out to Mark Nixon. I hope that wasn't buffering for everybody. But yeah, I want to just open up another tab, search in Mark Nixon. I could even give a link to his channel. Get over there, give him a subscribe, because he's just killing it. He's knocking it out of the park, and I just don't think he's being recognized enough. Let me make sure everyone has a link to that. It's just, I want to recognize people every time I see people doing great work. My bad here. Mark Nixon, get over the channel, give him a subscribe. Here's the channel here. Mark Nixon. If you don't know him, now you do. Get on over there. There's a link to his channel. He's doing fantastic work. He's just, like I said, he just hit 35,000 subscribers. Let's boost that even further. He's he's awesome, and he's also in the neighborhood. We've hung out in real life, and he's just, man, what you see on the screen is what you get in person. He's the real deal, man. He's the real deal. So big shout out to Mark. Mark, you're doing a fantastic job, and I want to see more of it. That's exactly where I'm going with that. So let's get into some of this stuff tonight. First, by addressing the chat, welcome everybody. And if you got yourself a wobbly pop, make sure you bust that out now. Now's the time to do it, or forever hold your peace. But I'm going to get into that. Wet the whistle. Yum. So we have a special show tonight. Of course, you guys have seen the thumbnail. Frank Vaughan's going to be coming in a bit later, but we also have some other guests. Jack might be coming. I'm not sure if it depends on where the conversation ends up going, but we also got Kevin. You may know him on Twitter as Gov.exe is corrupt. So the government executables are absolutely corrupt. And he's been reporting on that on Twitter for a very long time. So he'll be coming in to talk about some of the stuff that's happening in banking, in finance, and what's going on. Is Polyev coming? I doubt it. That would be interesting. I'll give his people the link to join if he ever felt like doing it. I think he's busy on the campaign trail, promising Albertans Alberta stuff. It's a new territory for the guy to actually focus on Alberta and what Albertans want. It's just not very important for people on the federal side of government because that's I guess it's not a winning strategy. It might be for the separatist movement. It might be for Alberta independence, but I digress. We can talk all about that as the show goes on. There's plenty to talk about tonight, so we're gonna get into a bunch of it. But one thing I wanted to get into right out of the gates, why don't we just start with something that I thought it was parody. I mean, I had to actually look up the account to see that I wasn't looking at something that was absolutely parody, and I actually even tweeted this out. There's no way this isn't parody. It's a real thing. This is apparently, I'll have to I got to read the tweet before you even see what the product is in this, because it's just wow. It's just wow. Oh, so this is Tim Houston from Nova Scotia. He's a member of parliament. This is not a fake account, folks. This is not one of those. No, this is real. Father, husband, MLA. Sorry, he's not a federal MP. He's a MLA and the premier of Nova Scotia. He is. He's the one looking out for all those Nova Scotians. Anyway, he tweets this on out. More housing, more affordability, more momentum. We're building 29 new affordable homes in Port Hawkesbury and Arcat. I don't know how to pronounce that. Giving more families, remember this, families, a safe, stable place to call home. Since 2023, our plan has paved the way for over 51,000 housing units across Nova Scotia, and we're just getting started with 29. It took you 2 years to get started and get 29 of them out there. But apparently we're going to be making 51,000 of these just in Nova Scotia alone. Prepare for these to be in every neighborhood around Canada. And the big reveal, I don't know if you'll even see it on the screen. This is what they're talking about. These are the homes. These are family home units that they're pitching. This really? I don't even know if this gives it justice. I want to keep the chat on the screen, but spacious. They're so small that the picture-in-picture is barely giving them justice. Let's get this in a bigger. No, it's got to be even bigger than that. Those are your homes, Nova Scotians. Those are the 29 homes that cost millions of dollars. This is what they're producing. This is not parody. This is not a joke. This is real. Oh, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. That's a shack. No, that's not a shack. That's 4 shacks. That's 4 families that they're going to house in these units, as they're explaining to us. This is the goal of these liberals here in Canada. It's unbelievable. This is where all our money's going to build affordable housing. And what's crazy too, what's absolutely crazy is that this is oh, I'll just read you what I wrote, because I replied to him, and I don't know, I'm not a Twitterite. I mean, I go on Twitter to get news, but I'm not constantly like posting and whatnot on Twitter. I just had to reply to this one. I think this is the first time I've ratioed anyone this bad. But yeah, my reply saying, I can't wait to move my whole family into a road construction office. Looks lovely. Absolutely. Looks lovely. It's a one room. Or is there multiple rooms? I don't know. Are you having your shower and cooking your meal at the same time in these places? It's absolutely outrageous. It's crazy. This needs to be the home of every governor general and politician. I second that. If this is the standard that they're setting, I think they should all have to live in them with their whole families. Nonetheless, family of 5, family of 6, whatever. Get in your pod. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. How is it that we got to this place? How is it that we got here? It's just unbelievable. So I did put this out there because it started dawning on me, like what this actually means. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is about to make a fortune for himself and his buddies, shoving Canadian families into construction-grade on-site office structures. This is what they have to offer. I had commenters. I don't know the specific commenters at the moment, but just remember the sentiment here is they said, they could have, for less money, just bought fifth wheel trailers and lined them up somewhere and had them all hooked up to the grid or hooked up to electricity, and it would have been so much cheaper. But you wouldn't be able to call them homes at that point, right? You wouldn't be able to do that. The Prime Minister of Brookfield, Mark Carney. Mark Crony and his all his buddies. Elbows up, never surrender. I love my fifth wheel, of course. And the fifth wheels would be much preferable to this. I mean, look at how many people actually live in fifth wheels at the present time. I know Mr. Sunshine Baby is living in his fifth wheel with his wife and kids, but they're traveling, having a great time. I think Clinton Jaws is living in his fifth wheel at the moment, traveling, having a great time. That would be preferable, but especially to this. I just can't believe it. I honestly cannot believe it at all. Mark Crony, bang on. Yeah, like so many people have had these other names for him. Mark's Carney, Mark, and then Carney as in like a clown or a carnival guy. No, Mark Crony, I think is the best name for him, because that's exactly what's happening. Canada is about to get looted, folks. This is what was just elected into the country. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you. I am disappointed. I'm disappointed, but I'm disappointed across the board. Mark's Crony. Yeah. Mark Crony. I like it. I'm disappointed across the board, because what's happening is we're another COVID mess is being brought on to us. A whole other COVID mess. I tweeted out just recently, I'm going to paraphrase because tweet's not in front of me, but I said, being an American citizen in Canada in 2025 feels a lot like being unvaccinated in 2021 in Canada. The mass formation psychosis is right back, and everybody's falling for it again. It's unreal. It's unreal. I guess we're ahead of the curve, right, folks? We're ahead of the curve because we've been paying attention, but so many people have gone from aware of what's going on to right back to sleep, and just absolutely falling for it all again. They got a new scapegoat. Hey, have you heard? There's a new scapegoat. Let's get it. Let's get that scapegoat. Who's the scapegoat? The scapegoat across the board is Donald Trump. And then by extension, and without being coy at all about it, is Americans. Anyone who is associated with America. Anyone who is supportive of what's happening in America, what Donald Trump might be doing. And we're seeing it across the board. We're seeing it with the persecution of singers who want to come to the country and, I don't know, maybe sing a couple of songs for some people about Jesus, a guy who lived here 2,000 years ago and taught people some pretty nifty lessons. But I'm having a hard time, and maybe chat, you can fill me in. You can help me out with this one. I'm having a hard time. Is Canada becoming more anti-American or becoming more anti-Christian? I don't know. Is it a perfect storm of the both? Because it seems that some people are using it as an excuse to put on showcase just the level of douchebaggery that is capable to come out of this nation. It's really unbelievable to me. Unbelievable. So we have this singer. His name is Sean Foyt. And he's being denied permits that he's already applied for and has been accepted. His permits are being revoked to sing publicly in front of other people. Imagine that permit. What is a permit anyway? Do you need to ask permission? Do you need to ask permission to be on private property and set up a stage and plug in your electric guitar and your microphone and sing a song to willing participants? Why? Where in the social contract is it that we're supposed to ask someone else, a third party, for permission to do things amongst ourselves on private land? Ask Tamara Litch. That's a great question. I love that. I love that. Unbelievable. Courage the Cowardly Dog for $2 says, hi, en route to Sturgis, passing the miles. I'm not even sure what the reference is. Somebody in the chat, fill me in. Fill me in. Oh, and people, the blaming, the scapegoating. The scapegoating is unbelievable. Again, the Jews. I don't know if you're being sarcastic. I see it a lot. There's a lot of this. Actually, right now. There's a lot of this. It's incredible. There was a tweet by Jack recently. What was the tweet? I can pull this up. I got to pull this up because I didn't even think I might even be talking about this. But let me get it. Let me get it for you right away. Jack, who might be joining the show tonight, tweeted this out. Said, no space for hate unless you're a police officer, conservative politician, a member of the gay community, or who asks questions, or a Jew. Then they hate you. So Montreal, I don't even know it. Ferrite, Montreal. Too many ex-ante-goos for my ability to pronounce words. Begins, organizers say Jewish LGBTQ plus group is excluded from the parade. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? Man, there's so much to get into today. And we're going to get into a bunch of it. I'm just trying to give an interlude and a quick chat with you guys here before we get into this, before some of our guests join the show. Because, boy, we got a lot of places to go today. But this is just absolutely crazy. So I tweeted this one out saying, American Christian singer, songwriter, preacher Sean Feucht is being systematically censored across Canada. His crime, being American, being Christian, having traditional values. Mr. Secretary Rubio, please have a look at the situation in Canada. Why would I single out Secretary Marco Rubio? Well, of course, back in May 28th of 2025, Marco Rubio tweeted this out. He said, for too long, Americans have been fined, harassed, and even charged by foreign authorities for exercising their free speech rights. Today, I'm announcing a new visa restriction policy that will apply to foreign officials and persons who are complicit in censoring Americans. Free speech is essential to the American way of life, a birthright over which foreign governments have no authority. Foreigners who work to undermine the rights of Americans should not enjoy the privilege of traveling to our country, whether in Latin America, Europe, or elsewhere. The days of passive treatment for those who work to undermine the rights of Americans is over. It's done. So I'd like to see Marco Rubio actually stand behind this, stand behind these words. Because Mr. Sean Feucht is an American citizen. And this is clearly a case. This is clearly a case of this. Now, people pushing back against my tweet saying, this isn't about being American, Christian, or having traditional family values. It's about being a grifter, jailbird, and a liar. To which I replied, even if that were the case, even if he was a grifter, a jailbird, and a liar, even if he was, and I'm not saying that he is, this person is that grounds to pull his permits and fine him for singing songs about Jesus? Do you have a right to shut somebody down because you believe that he's a grifter, jailbird, and a liar? No, you do not have a right to shut someone down. No, you don't have that right. But welcome to Canada. Welcome to Canada, where we have this document. It's an interesting document. It's called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. How much faith, chat, do you have in this Charter of Rights and Freedoms? I really would love to hear your response to this. I really would. This is Sean Foyt tweeting this out, saying, testing to see if this still means anything up here anymore. Let us worship. For a lot of us, we learned no faith, none left. Canada is toast. Why should an American in Canada have rights as a Canadian, as Canadians don't have rights? 10D chess. Oh, I missed where that was going. Trudeau wiped his butt with a charter. Not worth the paper it's written on. Streisand effect. Yeah, well, absolutely. Charter's not worth the Charmin it's printed on. All right, that's good. There's a fire starter, not worth the paper. Yeah. This is grifter, jailbird, and liar. The Liberal Party comes to mind. That's great. No free speech in Canada. No. And this is crazy. This is crazy because this is happening all around the world. This is happening elsewhere in the world. And we need to pay attention to this. Now, you may know the streamer Asmongold. He's been covering a lot of this stuff. And so he was covering this story here. And I'll have to share it with this instead if I want to get the audio. Yeah, that's correct. I'll have to share it like this so you guys can hear it. So this is an interviewer, and an interviewee is questioning a journalist questioning the government on the levels that they're going to with their basically what here in Canada we saw as Bill C-63, which we assume will be back. Britain is doing the same thing. They're trying to pass legislation to put people in jail for hate crimes, things like that. They're doing it under the guise of it's for the children. We're just trying to protect the children. Well, have a listen to this.
Openly admits the online safety bill is to stop adults' free speech they don't like. We'll listen to it.
Online safety bill. If it's just about children, is it just about children, or does it focus on
that should be an elite squad?
Barry, does it just focus?
Protect 13-year-old
I'm sorry, the elite squad is not about children. Actually, shall I read you the thing? An elite squad of police officers is to monitor social media for anti-migrant sentiment.
Anti-migrant sentiment.
Engaging that. So, is it also to monitor adults? Simple question, yes or no?
Yes, of course it will.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, there it is. Big fucking surprise. So the entire reason why they're doing it is the reason why everybody thought they were doing it. It's just simply so they can censor and tell people what they can and can't say, and they can regulate people complaining about migration, which is insane to me that that's even happening. How do you even let this go on? Openly admit.
How do you even let this go on? Absolutely. It is insane. It is insane, but this isn't a new battle. This isn't a new battle. The founding fathers of the United States of America, amazing, such forward-thinking individuals. They saw this because they were living through this at the time. Let's not forget Thomas Paine, jailed for speech in Britain. He was jailed for speech for leaflets that he passed out talking about liberty. Jailed under King George. And the problem that they recognized, because Britain's British subjects for the longest time have been afforded the privilege of freedom of speech and the ability to ask questions and say things publicly. But it's always been statutory. It was always a statutory thing that they had the right to speech. Now, what happens with statutes? Well, statutes, they can be changed. You can come in and change a statute. You can rewrite some of the laws. At the time, the king could unilaterally come in and say, you know what? I'm changing that statute so that I can throw you in jail with due process of law. Things were hundreds of years prior were fought for. The Magna Carta, This is crazy. But they recognize, holy cow, there's a big flaw to this system that, yes, we were allowed to say things, but these are privileges that can be taken from us, and they can just willy-nilly be taken from us. And this is why they said, no, when we're writing this document, the Constitution of the United States of America, this isn't a document, an instruction manual for the government how to operate. This is an instruction manual. This is guidance. This is basically telling any government that we're allowing to assemble. We, the people, are allowing you to assemble government. And these are the things you shall not infringe upon, starting with the First Amendment, free speech. The First Amendment, the most important one, free speech. And that is not something that Canadians are afforded. These are in our statutes. We have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that is trampled on all the time. We don't have a Second Amendment, which is the one amendment after free speech, the one that will protect the First Amendment. This is the way they envisioned it. This is the way they saw it. How are things working here in Canada? Well, interestingly, to say the least, and to join me tonight in conversation about this, Frank Vaughan. Brother.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I heard. I guess you heard my little preamble there going into it.
I did. What a place to begin. We in Canada, as you highlighted, have a privilege of free speech, and we have a privilege to defend ourselves. Although the process of exercising that privilege is the punishment, because you have to. There's lots of legal precedent for defending yourself and your home and your family. But you got to get charged with murder or manslaughter first. And then you have to pay a lawyer, and you have to go and defend yourself and clear your name. And the whole while, the media is dragging you through the mud no matter what the circumstances are. So that's the difference between rights that are bestowed by government and rights that descend from God, which is what the Constitution says, which is the advance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, there's a lot of people, especially right now, because, and I'll tell you first and foremost, I'm not one of them. Like, I'm not part of the 51st state crowd. Although I sympathize so much with so many of them. And my grievance, or I don't even think I have a grievance, but the only reason why I'm not in support of it is because as an American citizen myself and a voter, I don't want another California in the election. And this, for all the people that are arguing for it, the reason why they're arguing for it is because they want the Constitution. They want to be protected by the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it makes sense for all of Canada. I think it makes sense for certain parts of Canada. I think if we were just redrawing maps, we were just being based map painters, and we didn't have to worry about political concerns or anything else, a balanced addition to the United States would be BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, because they would be politically balanced along population lines and between conservatives and liberals. Now, how long that would last, who knows? But California used to be red. That was the state of Reagan. Now it's blue. And if you look at the last couple of election cycles, it's slowly hiking its way towards red again. It's not there. It's a long ways off yet, but it's slowly been moving in that direction. I think Trump flipped half dozen, 5 counties. I can't remember how many it particularly was, but things are changing, right? You can only burn things down so much before people want to try something different. Now, whether they're getting something different with Trump is something you can debate from a bunch of different angles, but the whole of Canada, I don't think they want the responsibility of creating 30 million Democrats overnight. And yeah, I mean, it's nice to think about, because I'd rather have the Constitution any day. I'd rather have the system that the United States has compared to ours. Our system's trash. I've made comparison videos point by point. You're a far freer human in the United States with a much greater chance to pull yourself up and prosper than you are here. That's just a matter of fact. So it's kind of nice to dream about that, but it's, one of the mistakes I think people on the other side make is they make it about Trump. Well, what are you going to do when Trump's out of office? It's not about Trump. It's not about Biden. It's about the Constitution. It's about the system. That's what you'd get. And that's it's just a distinction that gets lost. It's not about an individual. It's not about the personality who floated the idea. It's about the underlying infrastructure. And it has its problems too, but I think it's the best we've ever done.
I think Trump is just the boogeyman that the liberals really, really were waiting for and has been so beneficial to them politically. But also joining the conversation tonight, Kevin, also known as Gov.exe, is corrupt from Twitter. If you watch this channel, you've seen his tweets. You know exactly who this guy is, but you maybe have not seen his face. Welcome to the show, Kev.
Thanks for having me on. Hope the sound is good.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, no, I heard a bit of background noise, but I think we're good at this point.
You sound like you're coming from the front line.
So you just popped in on this. I don't know how much you heard of that. Is there anything you want to add right out of the gates?
Well, I agree with you, and I made that point, pretty clear. Like, Canadians want to be part of the 51st state, but have we ever asked the Americans if they want another, voting block, like a frozen California? Like, go ask anybody in the red states, and they don't want Canada for its socialist ideology. The only reason that they would want Canada would be for our resources, right? So the only way that I could see it ever happening would be to make it like a territory, like like Guam or like Puerto Rico, right, where there's actually no voting rights. But even then, that's not going to happen. And the way that I pointed out a bunch of times is, why are we going to leave one abusive relationship just to join another abusive relationship? Because we also have to keep in mind that Washington D.C. they do love to exert their powers upon the people. So it's just another abusive relationship, and I think that Washington D.C. and Ottawa suffer from the same problem. They are the swamp, and the swamp can't be drained. It has to be starved. And people are always like, oh, you're a CPCer or you're a PPCer or you're a mega. But my ideology was to decentralize. So you can't really label me as part of a federal party when I want to get rid of Ottawa, and you can't really label me part of mega when I want to get rid of Washington D.C. because I think those are the two big issues. If we take the power away from the federal government and transfer it back to more local governments, in this case state governments or provincial governments, I think we would be far more freer. And in terms of just the tax burden alone. So those are the points of views that I've always had. It doesn't make sense to join the 51st state. It does make sense to maybe push towards a constitutional republic. But you quote the Constitution, right? That's what we want to get. But the Constitution, again, it's only a piece of paper. In a demoralized society, a piece of paper is worthless. So that at the end of the day is what we have to strive for. Is if we want to move the needle back to more liberty and freedom, we have to remoralize society. And right now we're the level of demoralization, especially in Canada, is at all-time lows.
Oh, yeah. Well, demoralization's high. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you on your Twitter account, the symbol you use here is some people maybe don't know this symbol. This is the anarcho-capitalist symbol, the same one that Javier Milei from Argentina flies, the yellow anarchy symbol. Just explain what that actually means to you and what you're getting at with that symbol.
Well, to me, I guess I got interested in politics at a young age. I was like 17 or 18, and it was Ron Paul that really, brought me in. And this was, I guess, in the 2007, 2008 election. And I was a young guy, and I really liked what he had to say. And then I saw that he was filling stadiums, and his whoever he was campaigning, I guess it was Mitt Romney at the time. He couldn't even fill a Denny's at breakfast time. So, and then saw him go on to lose to Mitt Romney, and then Mitt Romney go on to lose to Obama. And then I'm like, okay, I like this libertarian point of view. Let's, exercise it more. Let's, investigate it more. And, libertarianism is just a stepping stone to anarchy. If the libertarian is honest, because you really have to, once you really unpack it, like, where can you draw that line where, the state is, I guess, a necessary evil, or the state is just evil and unnecessary. So in my point of view, that's, I don't know if I'm communicating that correctly or not, but I don't think that humanity or human beings need to be ruled over by masters. Obviously, there are a lot of people in Canada who thoroughly enjoy being subjugated, as long as they get to subjugate others. But, again, the maximum freedom point of view is, anarchy, is, no rulers. And, and people think anarchy is chaos, and that's not what anarchy means at all. It just means no rulers, and it doesn't mean no rules, right? There are rules in an anarcho system.
Well, it's the natural order, right? That's the idea.
But you can't impose an anarcho-capitalist system into a demoralized society, as we were talking about before, because then you'll have chaos. Then you'll have people being murdered and raped on the streets, and you can't have that. So again, my viewpoint, my political philosophy really aligns with remoralizing society and moving to a state of where there is no real rulers over people. And apparently, people don't like that, which I don't really understand why, but that's my point of view.
So I see it as very similar to like libertarianism. In fact, I look at, well, the classical liberals. So hey, you wouldn't mind just muting your mic when you're not speaking? There's some background noise. Kevin. Oh yeah, you're good. You're good. Okay, cool. Oh, maybe I'm hearing myself back through Frank. Sorry, that's where I'm hearing myself back. My bad. Okay, yeah, no, I just there we go. So the classical liberal thing. So obviously the word liberal has been bastardized completely. It doesn't even mean the same thing anymore, what it used to mean. Liberals, the classical liberals were Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine, George Washington. These guys, they were the ones who they wanted what a lot of people would call minarchism, the idea of an archy, a state, something that needs to exist, but it needs to be as small as possible. The idea of a necessary evil is the colloquialism for that. And the idea is that no, if for markets to work, we would have to have at least property rights protected. So if property rights are protected via a court system and some sort of mechanism of policing, then we have a society where the free market could operate. And without that, you just end up with warlords trying to take over each other all over the place. And I tend to agree with that. So it's a step back from, anarchism, but it's definitely not left-leaning at all, and not even as left-leaning as the contemporary conservatives, as we're seeing unfolding here in Canada, or even in parts of the United States. Some conservatives seem to have some left-wing ideology.
Well, I've pointed out a lot of times that at least half of the Conservative Party, maybe more than half, are left to center. You start bashing our socialized healthcare system, start bashing supply management, and a lot of conservatives will jump on you for that. And these are communist or socialist style systems that we have here. that need to be dismantled if you want to move to more of a free market point of view. Free market in healthcare, free market in dairy, which is such a small part of our economy. I don't even know why we waste time arguing about it, but here we are. But a lot of conservatives will actually come up and defend these systems. And I believe that these are the systems that need to be dismantled. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of these problems in the United States too, right? They may call them differently, but some of the issues that we have in Canada are mirrored in the United States. But at the end of the day, I think the issue is that there is too much government. There's no need for a federal, a provincial or state, and then a municipal government. We don't need 3 layers of government when the only thing that the government delivers basically is failure. Name one thing that the government has actually delivered more efficiently, more effectively, and better than what a free market can deliver. You can't name it because it doesn't exist, other than maybe death and dismemberment.
So, and chime in anytime, Frank. I'm going to ask you this because I know you've been covering this quite a bit, and this is the U.S. relation with Canada, and the idea that we're crying over spilt milk. So we have this dairy lobby, which is like a sacred cow in Canada. We've even codified into law recently. A defunct government that went into Parliament only for a short sitting was able to codify a bigger government by usurping power over the provinces with Bill C-5 and unanimously codifying into law that they cannot negotiate the dairy tariffs away, or the dairy lobby away. What's your thoughts on this? And because this could ruin trade relations with the United States altogether, just over a tiny fraction of the economy.
They're very politically powerful and very organized. They're one of the most well-greased lobby groups in the country. It's a crazy thing to think about. Dairy farmers, milk producers being powerful. There were 100,000 or 120,000 dairy farms when supply management was brought in, and today there's less than 11,000. So in terms of protecting dairy farms, the supply management has been a total failure. 90% of the farms have been consolidated or closed. But of those farms that are left, they provide an average of $11,000 each just to the respective dairy lobby organizations, amounting to, I think I did the math in one of my videos. It's like $100 or $120 million budget a year. In addition to that, they're in a position to cut those magical $1,750 max donation checks to local candidates. They're very organized, and they don't want the free market threat that the United States poses to them. They say that it's about supply safety, but supply management has nothing to do with supply safety whatsoever. That's the CFIA's department. And we could just ban hormones in milk like we are now and ban their import. And we could screen and know the difference, because if you got caught, we could levy heavy penalties. But I think that's why the cartel is so powerful. And you mentioned before, liberals and conservatives. When you go back to the roots of the United States, liberals and conservatives differed much less than they do today. Even though there's an alignment today as well, there's a sameness, but it was different back then. They all agreed that government was a necessary evil. The liberals believed that humans were inherently good, and conservatives believed that every human had a capacity for evil. And I think that's borne out if you read the works of Viktor Frankl and you study what humans are like when they become hungry and impoverished and enslaved and in chains, or they're given power and authority over the weak. The darkness comes out. It flowers in a very limited space of time. If you look at New Orleans,
Or when
Katrina,
we're afraid, it's so bad.
Yeah. Well, and when you're in actual mortal danger, there's a feral beast at the heart of every single man, and order keeps that beast in check. Now, when it comes to the way out of an overly dominant system, a huge bureaucracy, government out of control, is decentralization. But it's often accompanied by rapid disintegration. It's very hard not to have a period of chaos. But inevitably, we reorganize into some form of hierarchy. It's almost an anthropological rule. Whether it's at the small scale and at the tribal level, you elect a chieftain. Humans desire leadership. If you look around, 80 to 90% of the people in Canada want a leader of one kind or another. They vote Carney or they vote Poilievre, even though there's not much difference between them, but they're looking to outsource that capacity for leadership. And as much as one of my favorite sayings is lead yourself, like if I ever make a t-shirt, the first one I make is going to be lead yourself. It's almost euphoric. It's almost like it's an unattainable philosophy because most people don't want to be led. It's kind of this anthropological rule. So then what we're left with is, what does order look like? And I don't think there's an end point. So I think the guys that sat down, and mostly young men, like we call them the fathers of Confederation, these guys were young. And they got together and they cast their eyes about the world and they said, what can we do? How can we create a system that may be able to waylay some of the worst urges in humanity, limit the size of government, which has failed to do, and especially in recent times since the empire came along. And I guess that's the problem. When you go back to the Roman Republic and you look at the Roman Republic and how they had all of these different checks and balances on individual power, they also incorporated the idea of dictatorships and tribunes. You elect a dictator and they have absolute total dominant rule, and if they don't surrender it after a year, the mob just kills them. And that was kind of how the Republic functioned. But then they built an empire out of that structure. It worked so bloody well. The army was the traveling band of soldiers and engineers that built roads and networks and civilized everywhere they went, and they built this huge empire. It's almost inevitable that empire arises out of sound governing principles, and I don't know how you stop that. I think the point I'm trying to make is there's no end point. There's no final solution for the problem of big government and expansive bureaucracy. It's a fight to the finish every single day, to the end of every single day, to try and keep the thing in order. Now, to your point about the remoralizing of society, that's a fantastic point. I had a conversation with Tim Moen years ago that stuck with me, and he said his biggest regret during his time as being libertarian leader was the phrase, it was something like, I want gay people to be able to protect their weed plants with AR-15s. I think it was something like that. And he said, I really regret that, because a truly libertarian society is a socially conservative society because of morals, by volunteerism. That you have an educated people, they get their minds together, they delegate some powers away, and then they're all engaged in keeping an eye on that. But what's happened since the 1960s and the 1970s, all over the West, almost at the same time, is a fixation on hedonism, a fixation on self-indulgence and materialism, the abject assault on the idea of something greater than yourself. It tends to manifest in the form of Christianity and Jesus. I mean, it's, you can go to 100 concerts where they're burning crosses and they're crucifying people and doing everything else and just making mock. I mean, you've got metal bands like Deicide, like you can do all that, but it's never any other faith, which I find very curious. But it's this idea, this notion of taking the idea of something beyond yourself. It may not be a God, but if you had a higher moral calling, if you were a Marcus Aurelius and you actually engineered your life around principles that were beyond yourself, and then you put that into practice in your daily life, and you had a society made up of people that were educated to do that very thing, that were family oriented and loyal, then you could have a government like the Republic that would function very well. But it's this removal, it's this assault on people actually being involved and being directly involved. And now we're at this time where, we talk about 51st state and we talk about these ideas, but I think we're in a spiral, especially in Canada, where we're going to see inevitably decentralization, which will probably come through much more suffering than we're experiencing today. There's just not enough. Like, people aren't feeling enough pain. They don't understand how bad it is. And you can point it out all day intellectually, but until they start missing meals, they're not going to get it.
That pain is going to come. It's going to be forced upon by the free markets. It's going to be an economic point of view. And when something is going to happen, and the government will not be able to respond because the free market forces will overpower it. And we haven't seen that happen in decades, where the free market forces actually overpower central banks and governments. but that day is coming, and it's going to be a massive wrecking ball, and it's going to cause the bankruptcy or the insolvency of entire nation states and their respective central banks. That may not happen 10 years from now or 20 years from now, but it's going to happen. And,
so before we get into central
that is
banks,
that's going to be the wrecking ball. That's my opinion, anyways. I'm sure you have
Yeah.
a different opinion.
well, no, my opinion's very similar to yours. I just want to introduce our next guest as well to join the panel, because you're talking about the demoralization of society. A lot of demoralization has been pitting different particular groups against other groups, and people are just minding their own business, living their own lifestyles. And our next guest was just living his own lifestyle, and the elites, the people in charge of things, the people who are just pulling on the strings, used his community against him. And this is what largely brought him to the conversation on Twitter. You all know him as Jack. It's Jack Dan 10 if you don't know his handle. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Thanks for having me. Hi guys, how's it going?
Absolutely. So you've been a part of this. So I'm alluding to the alphabet mafia, the alphabet soup of a community, which I'm guessing when you grew up was just a few letters, LGB, and that was it. And it's been, if that, right? So just like L and B, L and G, and that's it. Except, there's like a Chinese TV manufacturer or something that took that one. So
it's a serial code now. So like,
well, exactly. So how did they adopt your community, take it over, and now you're not even welcome into it? That's how accepting they've become.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not welcome into it. It's been made perfectly clear that I'm not. It was LGB, and then T joined in the 90s. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for all this. Thanks a lot, Clyde.
You're welcome.
Wear it like armor.
And pardon?
Wear it like armor.
Oh, I do. Yeah, it's kind of funny. And then later on, we suddenly got the Q, the I, the A, the alphabet, and everything in there as well. So yeah, I just kind of knock it off after the first four. So yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So the viewpoints of lesbians and the viewpoints of gays, do they even see eye to eye, or are they like completely like do lesbians and gays have a similar philosophy on the LGB? In the LGB, and and then you throw in the bis, and really nobody trusts them. So, the original lesbian, gay, and bi.
Yeah.
Right now, wouldn't the bisexual be bigots?
It's interesting you say that. It's funny. Everybody keeps saying that there's more than two genders. Then why do we have bisexual in there?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That would infer that there's only two.
Yeah.
The thing that I came up with, it's beliefs. It's replacement for faith. So that acronym has a ton of contradictions built into it. And these are people who have no faith in something greater. And so they've substituted this delusion about gender and its fluidity when it's not fluid at all, and should never have been separated from sex. I mean, the whole thing is based on the separation of gender from sex, which is nonsense.
Right. No, I was just like, okay. No, it's very interesting. I totally forget your original question now, Clyde. Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry. It was whether or not we feel the same. It depends on who you ask. Honestly, it depends. There are a lot of lesbians that feel the same way that a lot of the gays do. There is a big distinction between queer and just being gay. Like, I don't identify with the whole queer thing. I hate using the word identify as well. I think that's just, I hate using words like that. But I don't buy into the whole queer movement. Queer to me is a radical standpoint that's very politically charged. You know what I mean? So I kind of steer it right away from that. That's not what I believe in. So,
and I guess another question that I have for you. Sorry, Clyde, I know it's your show, but another
conversation.
Another question that I have is, why is the LGBT community seem to be so always left leaning and embracing the idea of authoritarianism when so many gays and lesbians and bisexuals died under the hands of an authoritarian government throughout history. And these people will be rocking Che Guevara t-shirts. How many gays and lesbians did these authoritarians kill? Thousands, millions of them. But they seem to gravitate back towards radical left-wing authoritarianism. It doesn't make sense to me.
Especially Che Guevara. He was a known, like, he really hated gay people and black people. He murdered them for those reasons.
People wear t-shirts with his face on them all over the place.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't know why it's gravitated towards that way. I believe it, in my own opinion, I believe it's politically motivated. A lot of the things that are happening that we see now, it has nothing to do with the original movement, with the original quest that gays and lesbians had. We just wanted equality. We wanted to be able to visit our partners if they were sick and dying, that whole thing, right? So that's what we originally...
So the day's been won. Like, the battle's been won, and
it was over.
Now it's time
it was over.
to celebrate. That's it.
Yeah. It was done, and then it's really funny. My friend Ultra Get Back Your Dad and I, we always say we had a really good 5 years. We really did. It was fantastic, no problems. Everybody was fine. It was great. And then all this craziness started, where we're seeing queers for Palestine. I mean, and then you're seeing in Montreal, they've now, Jewish groups are no longer allowed to participate in Pride. I mean, like, so much for the all-inclusive. I was furious about that today. I was tweeting away. If you're Jewish, you can't be in Montreal Pride. Like, you're excluded from it. Like, you can't register to be in the parade. So what are you doing? Like, and then you find out that who the organizers are of these pride groups now and what they're standing for. And it's like, oh, okay, well, this makes perfect sense. To me, and to a lot more people who feel the same way I do, we've seen it as a total hijacking of our community, and it no longer has anything to do with us. It no longer represents us. And the people that are buying into that need to take a really good look at themselves and say, hey, why am I part of something that's excluding people? We're supposed to be all inclusive. We're supposed to be like, oh, love is love and all that. Yeah. So you can't be included if you're Jewish, if you're a police officer, if you're a conservative politician, or if you're a gay or lesbian in the community that asks questions. You were immediately blacklisted. Like, it's gone to this point that it's just absolutely ridiculous and radicalized. So
I think all of these are hijackings of other movements. We saw the same thing with Black Lives Matter. It turned into a communist movement for that. We see it with the Palestine thing.
Yeah,
half the people that are there don't know anything about the Palestinian issue. They're just left wing, for lack of a better word, retards from academia that are told, show up to this place. We're fighting against the man. They don't know the particulars of the situation. And if you look at the particulars, because Frank has been looking at the particulars, and holy hell, it's not black and white. It's ugly. It's awful on both sides. It's not a great picture, but they're just latching onto it for ulterior motives is what I'm getting at. I don't think that they even care about these, project du jour or protest du jour issues. I don't think it's not for that at all. It's like Kevin's saying, the demoralization of society.
Yeah, it's now gone to that complete way. I mean, you're seeing all of these activists within that community trying to cancel Sean, a Christian singer that's just coming here to sing. Like, I have no problem with that. Like, that's Christian. And then they're all like, oh, well, he hates all the gays and he hates this. I'm like, I'm sure he doesn't hate us. And he's like, well, they preach against it. And I'm like, yeah, most religions preach against homosexuality. Why is this new to you? Like, what part are you not getting? Like, they're against it, right? So they accept you, they're nice and all sorts of stuff, but like it's part of the religion, right? This has been around.
They're not throwing you off a roof.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They're not stoning you to death in public.
Yeah, and that's the part that amazes me about the Queers for Palestine. If you were in Palestine, you would be thrown off a roof. They would have a party in your name up on that rooftop, and they'd throw you off of it. There's videos out there on the net of Palestinians in Palestine saying, please stop supporting us. We don't want your help. Like, it's just crazy to me. I'm like, what is going on? I think
So let's say, and the ultimate irony, because, you know, Elon's razor, similar to Occam's razor, is that the outcome is most likely to be the most ironic and funny. This is what's happening in Canada. Juno News reporting that a legacy media is silent as a pro-Sharia imam kicks off a Canadian tour. He's going to be visiting your town and promoting Sharia law and all this other stuff that's very against LGB, all the alphabets, even the 2S, which doesn't make any sense to me. But all of that stuff, it's crazy. So it's all just ironic at this point. Yeah. Until you realize that the only purpose is to demoralize. That's all this is about.
Yeah, so like I really believe that people have the right to, you know, that this Sean guy, he has the right to put on a show, and people have the right to counter protest and try to cancel him. Like, people have the right to try to cancel somebody. But my question is, how much of these are actually organic movements, and how much of these movements are actually from infiltrators or agent provocateurs that have vast amount of resources and money that's able to make these movements go viral. And that is the issue here. The centralization of these movements, they are not organic. People have the right to counter protest. You can protest and you can counter protest, but when one movement goes viral, and you know that it's not organic, you know that it's being driven by an ulterior motive. And then you have to ask yourself, who has the means, who has the capability, and who has the will to do this? And it usually narrows itself down to a few usual suspects.
So devil's advocate, though, you could argue that Sean Foyt was brought there by the MAGA movement, and you know what I mean, that this is the charges that would be levied the other way, that this is all a publicity stunt to get Canada to react poorly to some Christians who say some provocative things about abortion and you know, adultery, that kind of thing. So I actually believe that it's organic. I don't think that it's that, but devil's advocate always, you know, throw those arguments out there.
And I think it's entirely possible, right? There's moves and there's counter moves.
Well, I think you said it with reacting. So we're emoting. These people are emoting. They're not actually thinking things through. They're not asking themselves, are there better uses of my time? They're not asking themselves, is this a legitimate threat, or is there something better I could be doing with my time, or is there something better I could be protesting? It's a knee-jerk response that is bereft of any intellectual processing. So everybody's reacting to everybody else on both sides, and they're not pausing for a time of sober second thought. It's all anger. I mean, you watch people that go to these protests. The ones with the cameras and the ones that are protesting on either side, there's provocateurs that just go and film the gong show of emotional outburst. There's not a good debate to be had. I mean, it's rare. And you know what the funny thing is when there actually is a good debate that arises between a random encounter at one of these things, no one wants to watch it. It's too thought-provoking. Who the hell wants to think? We want to see people getting punched in the face. We want to see smoke grenades. We want to see tear gas. We want to see a gong show. We want to see that Christian singer strung up, and forget about that imam. That's too complicated, right? Like, talking about that subject is far too complicated for a lot of people because it bridges into racism. It bridges into this notion that there's only one religion it's so weird to me. Christianity is this religion that, by and large, can coexist with just about anybody else for the most part. We can look through history and you can parse that, but let's talk about the way it is in modern times.
Well, I would argue, and very briefly, that the Crusades were in response to caliphates that were moving into Europe. I mean, it's right, but it's provocation.
It's so far gone. It's so far gone. And I mean, Christianity is not even the same. Like, Christianity today is not the same as it was at the beginning. It's not the same as it was at the middle. And it's not even really the same as it was 300 years ago.
Or the 60s.
But at the end of the day, It's Christian societies that have built these societies of tolerance. We allow, or Christian societies, or Christian, if you object to the term Christian societies, even in secular societies, largely the product of Christian thinkers. So we created the tolerance, we created the space for all of this to happen, and it's the only faith that is under perpetual assault. The faiths that are actually presenting a concerted effort. I mean, if they had their way, it would be stomped out, because it's stomped out in the societies in the Middle East. There's no such thing as a gay community. There's no pride parades in Riyadh. There's no pride parades in Amman. There's only pride parades in Western countries, because it's stomped out. They do the same here. Believe it, they would do the same here, but we can't talk about that reality. So just to finish up, activists like to pick on things that can't fight back. So they attack statues, they attack history, they raise issues that are long buried, and they attack the faith that literally is built around the principle of turning the other cheek and acceptance, because it will not fight back militantly. The militant faith is gone with the Crusades. And so we're left with what we have now. It's an easy target.
So just to demonstrate your point here was this thing that was going on in Osaka. You may notice a thing or two.
This is Osaka, Japan Pride. We are at Osaka Pride. What does Osaka Pride represent to you?
Revitalization.
It's progression, isn't it?
We want to celebrate openness and diversity, especially in such a conservative country.
It represents coming out and being yourself. And
Representation is very important, and I'm here representing India. I can be myself.
I hate the fact that we need to fight for our place in this world, especially in this time.
To really represent the LGBT community back home in America and bring that energy back here.
This is Osaka.
So I tweeted this out, and my quote tweet was, "Okay, do Egypt next." Right? So they go to Japan.
Take it over.
You may notice there wasn't a single Japanese person in that whole video. That was a thing that really struck me right away.
It's not the same thing, but just to your point,
they're so tolerant. They're so tolerant there, and they just go there to pick on people who are tolerant. That's it.
You have an example in Egypt when all of these activists went there recently, within the last 2 or 3 weeks. They flew over there, chartered a flight, spent all this money. They go into Egypt, and they're going to save Palestine. And they damn near got stoned to death in the street. They had to get back on their buses and go back to the airport and get the hell out of the country. And I remember watching this one video of a woman crying, and she's like, "I don't understand it." It's like, you're right. You don't understand it. You haven't reasoned with it at all. You don't know anything about what you're talking about. So, like, why are you doing this? Sorry, Clyde. It's just, they did Egypt. It didn't work. And that wasn't even for what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, do Yemen, do Jordan, do Saudi. Saudi's pretty chill these days. They're not harboring any terrorists or anything like that. But try doing it there. Go to Dubai and have your thing. It's asinine. It's an exercise of pushing yourself on people. And this is the part that I don't like, right? Like, I don't give a shit what your lifestyle is, what you want to do. Obviously, I have friends in the gay community. Jack, you're here tonight, right? So I don't, and my token gay friend. I mean, you could call it that if you wanted, but honestly, like, I don't give a shit what.
He's the guy that gives us all credibility.
That's it, right? So at least on this topic, we're gonna move on.
That's the only reason I'm here tonight. Not all of you guys aren't called homophobes, right? So.
Right. So, but that's it. So I don't care what people with religion people want to practice. I don't care what proclivities people have. It makes no sense to me is until they push it on you. And it's the same. It's the same in the other direction. Like we all remember what was it, Dirty Dancing, or was it Footloose? I can't remember the one where the preacher's the bad guy telling people they can't dance.
Footloose.
Like, yeah, that's Footloose. Okay, that's the gay guy. So that's the image that people have in their mind about what Christianity is this like overbearing thing. But a generation has passed. And look at it now. Who is the overpowering thing? The preacher from that movie. You could equate them to the LGBT mob that's in schools that are telling little kids how they should feel about other people's sexual proclivities. It's nonsense. this isn't a place we should be going. We don't need the pendulum to swing all the way the other way. We need to just become a little bit more tolerant with everybody else. But they're taking advantage of our tolerance in our society is what it is.
I just want to say really quick, I have so many friends that are Christians, and they're good friends. Like I some in Toronto and all that as well, in Ontario. Sorry, they're just in Toronto. But no, I have friends that are Christians. I have friends of every religion. Nobody cares. It's not being gay is the least interesting thing about me. So it's not something I run around when I meet you. I don't run up to you and go, "Hi, my name is Jack, and I'm a he, him, they, them, and blah blah blah." Like that's annoying, and even I want to punch the people that do that. So like, it's just I don't know.
Chat's wild tonight. If you're watching live, make sure you're paying attention to the chat.
There's a guy in the chat, guest, and he's just all about, he's like, oh, more virtue signaling to gay people and whatever else. It's like, I'm watching this and it's like, I had these two customers when I was doing farmers markets, and they were a gay couple, and they were like, I could have, like, I never got the chance to rock beers with these guys, and it's one of the biggest regrets of my life. They were solid people. They worked hard. They didn't bother anybody. They weren't flamboyant. They weren't out there strapping dildos to themselves and walking around the streets in front of kids, which I absolutely find aberrant and objectionable.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to speak for you, dude, but I think you're just out there living your life. It's not the life. It's not my choice. It's not where I'm at, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see why it's virtue signaling to have the room in my heart that you get to exist.
So someone in the chat said that it's virtue signaling to us because I'm here?
Yeah, I mean, it's just some random guy named Guest, Anon.
Sorry, Guest.
It happens.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Oh, but that's it. Like, you pay attention to the chat at your own peril. I mean, I've been getting so much pushback just because I'm American these days.
Yeah.
And it's all hard.
I don't get that at all.
Well, it's crazy. This is a perfect segue to get off the gay stuff and talk about what's happening with this new, and I think it's a mass formation psychosis here in Canada, that they're leaning hard on this anti-American sentiment. And my theory is that the liberals are leaning on it, and they're leaning on it hard because it's a political win for them. They can totally look at it this way. They could sabotage the trade negotiations, and I think this is what they're doing. Frank, I think you alluded a bit to this in your video, where why is it that they had to come out and make an announcement about recognizing Palestine as a state today? Why did they have to do it before the deadline for the tariffs and not after the deadline for the tariffs and after the deal? They're not going to the UN today to make these declarations. They did this. I personally think that the liberals are sabotaging our partnership with the United States, or any vestige of that partnership that still exists. And they're doing it for political gain. They're doing it so that they can stay in office and keep popularity and not have to look forward to an election soon. What's your thoughts?
From the last 4 years under Biden, the Trudeau administration and people within that administration, I don't even know if you can call it an administration here. The appointed cabinet under the governor general and the monarch spent 4 years insulting the previous administration. And then when the election came along, they were trying to be subtle and trying to be clever at it. And they were about as subtle as a sledgehammer inside of a glove, insulting and saying it's impossible for him to win and everything else. And then lo and behold, Trump wins. And then since that point, I mean, just pick your example, Doug Ford threatening to cut electricity off to 1.5 million people. So it's a crime against humanity to do that. And he just casually floated it out there, and with a smile on his face, he says, I'd do it with a smile on my face. I'd screw those Americans. It's like, these are mostly northern states that didn't vote for Donald Trump. And even if they did vote for Donald Trump, almost half of the population didn't vote for the guy. It's like we're just deliberately inflaming the situation every step of the way. And then you look at...
Well, the Americans are the new unvaccinated, right? It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing.
It's literally what I
Yeah,
tweeted
we're-
out the other day. I tweeted out that, you know, being American in 2025 in Canada is it's like being unvaccinated in 2021.
But it's insane to me because the Americans I know have no idea how stupid it is up here. They have some idea of how dumb Canadian society actually is. And I'll say it just like that's me saying it. I don't want to speak for you guys, but there's a lot of people in this country, it's a majority, who are so bought into this stupid anger. And it literally, I mean, it comes from nowhere. One of my frustrations today when I made my video is, again, every single article I read, we're not telling the truth about the nature of the tariffs. We're not telling the truth. Like I saw Pierre Poilievre's tweet today. He said, the best deal is no tariffs from the U.S. side. What about our side, bro? What about all the different percentages we charge their stuff? Like, this is the leader of the so-called opposition buying into this idea that the only fair arrangement is a one-sided arrangement where we win. They get to keep defending us. They keep shipping $100 billion, $200 billion worth of capital into Canada and BC. Like, everything we do, and then the timing of the Palestine announcement. It's like, for one thing, I don't even know if Palestinian recognition is going to happen. I think the war's done, and they'll build their concentration camp in Gaza long before any of that stuff happens. But a day, like what was it, 36 hours before the deadline, they throw that out there, knowing full well. I mean, it seems obvious to me at this point that like Trump is in the pocket of AIPAC for sure. Like when a nation of 9 million people can call on the assembled might of the U.S. military at its whim, call meetings with the Pentagon, clearly influence the cover-up of Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, you go to the Wikipedia. Wikipedia is notoriously biased, but if you go to the Wikipedia on Jeffrey Epstein, because this is an issue important to the left, it's very honest about where he comes from, how he got his job, his rise, his links to Mossad, all this stuff. It's just all getting covered up. So it's like, I'm Canada. I'm a weakling power, if I can even call myself a power, and I'm trying to think Machiavellian. I'm trying to think pragmatic. The last thing I want to do 2 days before a negotiation is set to expire is insult the people who seem to have the most influence over the president right now. We just decided to do that. It's got to be deliberate. It's deliberately torpedoing the nation's prospects. It has to be. It's not by accident. I mean, Mark Carney gets installed. He comes over here, the central banker, the quintessential financier, this guy who overseen Brookfield. It's designed to make these people money and create tax shelters and schemes. And he comes in here like he's going to be the champion of the middle class. He didn't even do that because he promised to deliver pain and suffering. I've never seen it. It's like Tim Houston. I'll stop here. Tim Houston's post today, or was the other day, you were the one that brought it to my attention, where he's standing in front of construction sheds and he's like, affordable housing for all. The politicians are proud of the message of destruction and destitution. They're campaigning on it now. And Carney was all about the doom. And people are like, yeah, that's what I want. It's like they can't hear.
Well,
before we get into the next bit, I just want to corroborate what Frank's saying here. Here's Howard Lutnick on the news talking about exactly what you just said.
The Canadians put out, oh, we're going to recognize the Palestinian state. I mean, come on, don't be so tone deaf, right? The president is totally into trying to get peace in Gaza, and you're throwing your hat in the ring from Canada. Come on. You know, they still haven't solved dairy. They still have 2 countries on the whole world retaliated against the United States of America tariffs. China, which we all know, and Canada. So
that's right. That's where we're at. It's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Kevin, you were going to jump in there.
Yeah, like Mark Carney even told us that he wants to move us away from the United States and create a stronger trading and security relationship with the EU and China. So obviously that means that he has to sabotage the relationship with the US. So, all of these things that are happening right now are very predictable and have been predicted for months by anybody, with more than 2 brain cells that can, piece these things together. How Mark Carney was parachuted in, how he would, win an election, because elections in Canada are actually selections, and then how he would move this policy to sever any ties with the US and push us closer to the EU, which is a basket case, which is basically a communist point of view, and move closer to his banking relationship with China and all of that. So if you actually read between the lines of what he says, then it's very obvious that they're trying to sabotage any deal. And if we take a look at it intellectually honestly, the Liberals cannot govern unless there's a crisis. Over the last how many years we've been through perpetual crises, and crisis is the rallying cry of a tyrant, right? So this is what we see. We go from crisis to crisis to crisis because that's the only way that the natural governing party of Canada can actually govern. If there isn't any crisis, then everybody is forced to look at their actual policies, which we had the ability to do so for a few months when the CPC's polling was way up, and then another crisis came along, and that reverted pretty quickly. But if there was no crisis, the Liberal Party would fall by the wayside. They would go extinct. So they know that they have to create perpetual crises, and that's why they have no intention in actually ending this trade conflict with the United States, because it's the worst crisis of our generation. So why would they want to end that? And then it would kill all support, and it would kill all momentum to their own party. It makes no sense from a political point of view that they would actually want to bring this to an end. But if you take a look at, the definition of treason, what they're actually doing could really be, categorized as treasonous activity. That's just my point of view.
That word is just gone anymore. Everyone's throwing around the word treason for everything. You're moving out of a province. You don't support a political candidate anymore. You're a treasonous. You should be strung up. You're like, holy crap.
But
treason
by definition, what they're doing is putting their own political interests ahead of the country itself. And that you can probably categorize as treason, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking away from what you're saying. I'm just saying that the word has just been overused these days for asinine things. It's crazy.
Well, treason has a legal context. It has a legal meaning. It has a specific meaning. But in order for it to mean anything, you have to have the rule of law. And we don't have it in this country. We don't have the rule of law. We basically have a soft version of revolutionary courts from the revolution in Russia. I mean, if you read Solzhenitsyn, there's parallels. I'm not saying we're there yet, but there's parallels in how justice is meted out politically versus justice being meted out on the merits of the case. And further to your point about crisis, with the big red machine is actually the machine of fear, and it is the machine of crisis. But they don't even, and this is the thing that was revealed in this election, they don't even take themselves seriously anymore. They're doing what you said, but they manufactured this elbows up hoopla, and they're dancing like idiots at the victory party, and they're doing the whole thing. And then they went home. And I mean, they said, I remember Carney talking about a financial crisis. He was talking about how there has to be more austerity in Canada. He had it all out there. And it's like nothing happened. They all went home, and it's been left to the Canadian people to maintain the hysteria and the momentum, which I find interesting. They're doing a great job on their own. The boycotts with the United States, there's this whole organic hysteria that the people are keen to keep going, and all the Liberals have to do is stoke it to take advantage of it. And the Conservatives have no clue how to respond. No clue whatsoever. I don't even know if they want to. I mean, honestly, I don't know if they want to.
Jack, you were going to get in there before I get into another point.
No, I tweeted that out a while ago. Was Carney installed to turn us into the EU and all that? It did, yeah. So, just agreeing with you guys, yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
We can't physically replace the United States, period, ever.
No.
I mean, we can't physically move the country and attach it to Spain and France. We can't, off the Biscay Bay, like we can't just move the country.
Yeah.
It's and Europe, as I think you said and someone else said, being a basket case, they don't have sufficient energy for heating their own people. They don't have sufficient energy. Like, they have killed themselves. When the Americans went in and they blew up Nord Stream, whoever did that really screwed Europe because they needed that Russian oil. And they thought,
Yeah.
you know what, we'll cut Russia off and it will make them suffer and they won't be able to fight in Ukraine. Well, they just turned around and sold it to India. They basically replaced the entire European market for their products with India. So Europe just agreed with the United States to buy a whole bunch of their stuff and pay tariffs. We're talking like $1.4 trillion. Europe is a glorified vassal state of the United States because of their policy to Russia. They need energy from somewhere. And into the midst of this, Mark Carney on his big red steed comes riding in and says, we're going to align with them. What it's really all about, though, he actually told the truth during the debates. He said, what's the biggest threat to Canada? And he answered, China. And the media lacked curiosity, and it was a slip that went away. But we know that that's who these guys are working for. It's all about China. That's why the ports are open. The ingredients come in for the drugs so that we can run them into the United States and screw up their society. Like, we're a vassal state of China. And this talk of going to Europe with our products, that's all it is. It's talk. It's like flying cover. It really bothers me, and I'll stop here, when I see Scott Moe and Daniel Smith talking about the necessity of accessing that Chinese market. I mean, getting to the world market is a good idea, but there's this great big bloody market right there that's just always been waiting with bags of money to buy our stuff. And now all of a sudden we can't take the bags of money. Do we hate prosperity that much? It's ridiculous, and it has to be concerted. Canada's being sacrificed to try and undermine the United States.
So how do you access the Chinese market? And this is an interesting question, because there is a vast market in China of consumers that you could have access to, but China is very limited. You can't open up business in China and sell to Chinese. You can open up business in China to sell to Americans, to sell to Canadians, to sell to the Europeans, to sell Australians, but China's closed for business on their own market. They want to sell to their own market. That's not a thing. This is where Donald Trump comes in. Everybody else has been trying. You know, you look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership that Stephen Harper was bringing about. It was NAFTA with China. It was awful. It was not a good trade deal for any of us. It was a great deal for all of those people over there in China, because they didn't forfeit anything in the negotiations. But Donald Trump comes in, and here's the thing. It's the same for everybody. Canada needs to just get off it and stop feeling like you're that important. I hate to just come out and say that, but look at it this way. Indonesia, trade deal. What was the corner of the trade deal? 19% tariffs on all Indonesian goods coming into the United States of America. Then they had to open up their market and guarantee that they were going to buy a number of different things from America, including energy, Boeing planes, a bunch of other stuff, and open their market so that American companies could enter the market and sell their goods there. We're talking like 280 million people strong economy. That's a great deal for America. But then they get a tariff. And you know what? They were happy with that. They're like, okay, we'll take the tariff. You know, it's Americans that are paying that, but it makes our goods more expensive and harder to compete with the Americans on the American market. Okay, whatever. Vietnam, similar thing. 20% tariff on all the items that are going from Vietnam into it. They opened up their market, guarantees on certain energy and items purchased over a period of time, and opened their market up to the American companies to sell their products. These are the negotiations that are happening with China right now. They're not finalized, but this is a better direction than we've ever gone with any other negotiation with this giant China. And Europe, similar deal, 15% tariffs across the board on European items coming into the United States. And there's guarantees. You're going to buy this energy, you're going to buy these products, you're going to do this, and you're going to open up our market. We can now sell our SUVs and our other things into the European market, which were previously banned forever. Like the only car you could get in Europe for the longest time was a Ford Focus, because it was the only one from the North American auto manufacturers that they actually put research into, selling it on that market to comply with all of the regulation. So it's crazy. all of this is happening, and yet Canada, 40 million people spread out on a giant geography, but all kind of huddled down because Canadians don't want to admit it, but they know the biggest commodity that they have is their proximity to the United States of America. And now they're not going to get the backwards deal that they've always had. Trade barriers this way, but not that way. They want reciprocity. They want a fair deal. And Canadians are just like, I can't fathom this. The rest of the world is putting their big boy pants on and talking to Donald Trump. Canada just won't.
We're like the babies at the table. Bring up Jilly. Just sent you a super chat.
Oh yeah, definitely bring that up.
Not to tell you how to run your stream, but I read it, and it.
In the super chats, I can't see anything.
I have to address 2 more before we get to that. Just bear with me. G Meister, members for 37 months. Can you believe that? That's amazing. Thank you so much, G. I don't know what LWT. I don't know what that acronym is. Hope Alberta.
I think it says Let's Hope.
Oh, Let's Hope Alberta. There's me, my dyslexia. Let's hope Alberta leaves and adopts proper constitution based on the people's rights, not government rights. Absolutely with you on that one. Moonglow for $2 says, great panel. Always great podcast. Thank you. Thank you, my man. Appreciate that. And Jilly Peppers jumping in with the comment that Frank was alluding to for $10 says, milk is good, but it isn't worth our sovereignty. Why wouldn't we want to strengthen our borders? At what point do the taxpayers have enough of being taken advantage of? Enough already. Pay for us all. Pray for us all. I'm just thinking about paying. Pay for it. Pray for us.
I wanted to address one other thing about supply management, because we're always thinking about the Americans. But I was in a position earlier on in my life, not that long ago actually, where I had to break the news to people on a regular basis who wanted to get into cheese making and dairy. And I was in a position where I'd have to pop the bubble of their dreams and say, if you don't have quota, you can't commercially make milk. You can't commercially make cheese. You can't sell it. I'll admit, statute of limitations. I used to buy black market cheese that I had to buy from a guy who was running a cafe, and he was making his own cream cheese and selling it illegally behind the counter. I bought it, and I'm proud to buy it. Come at me for cheese. It would be my first criminal charge. So you got to tell people.
They will.
You got to tell people that they can't get in the game, and you got to break the news to them. They're like, why? And it's because, well, there's this quota system, and if you're not in now, listen, there's another one, chicken.
Frank, before you go on, a guy was just jailed in Alberta for having one too many dozen eggs, like a couple of chickens too many out of a flock of chickens. Like they just
statute of limitations. You can't get me. I didn't buy that cheese anytime soon. So, but anyway, the chicken thing as well. So we had to fight. It used to be if you didn't have quota for chickens, you could raise 150. And then we got it boosted to 300 through a lot of activism. I don't know where it's at now because I'm not in the scene anymore. But in order to sell your chicken, you couldn't have signage telling people that you had chicken for sale. You couldn't legally tell people that you had chicken for sale. They had to ask you, like Freemasonry almost. They had to approach you first before you could tell people that you had chicken for sale. So concerned with competition were they. And that's what it's all about. It's about competition. So all I want to say is there's the other side of it. It's not just the big picture. It's the little guy trying to do something cool with their kids, have a homestead, do farming stuff. And it's like, you don't get to do chicken. You don't get to do eggs without these convoluted rules. And forget about milk and forget about cheese. It's just lost on you. Like it sucks.
Do you want to hear an absurd story? So, there's this gentleman by the name of Ben Levin. I'm sure everybody knows him. He was the education minister, deputy education minister under Kathleen Wynne in Ontario. And he was charged and convicted, sent to jail for 18 months for distributing child pornography. 18 months, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you are caught distributing raw milk in Canada, you could go to jail for up to 2 years. So you are a bigger criminal if you want to distribute raw milk than you did what Benjamin Levin did in Ontario. And you will be fined over $10,000. And I think Canada is one of the only countries in the G7 that will actually imprison people for distributing raw milk.
Look what they put Michael Schmidt through. If you guys don't know that name, check him out.
I just, in all fairness, because I'm very pro-American and all this other stuff, but the raw milk situation is a situation in the United States. People are trying to get around it by doing like cow shares and stuff like that.
That's what Schmidt did here.
But the FDA is really cracking down, and I hope with RFK that they pull some of these laws. I don't know what they have to do to fix the situation, but yeah, people who just want raw milk. And for the audience that are just, what's raw milk? What's raw milk? It's just unpasteurized right out of the udders. Like you get milk and you sell it to somebody. That's illegal. It's like contraband. It's like a Schedule 1 drug. It's crazy. And in Canada, it's crazy with the whole milk situation. I even tweeted this out. I said, you know, in Canada, it's easier to get fentanyl than it is to get Wisconsin cheddar. Like, this is how ridiculous it actually is. It's that ridiculous.
Well, you can actually get, hard drugs from vending machines in certain places in BC. We've seen it, right? We've seen, and they were actually giving out kits of hard drugs to in certain schools, certain high schools in BC. Like, there was articles from the National Post on it.
I just want to do a little bit of pushback on that. So it was drug paraphernalia that you can get from the vending machines. You couldn't actually get the drugs themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, you had to go in. So, but you can get your pipes and all of that stuff, and it was all free. It was right off the tax dole. You just click the button and it comes out. Cat Canada did a whole showcase on that in Nanaimo.
And then when doctors or whatnot tried to prescribe ivermectin during COVID, what happened to them, right? So it's easier to get hard drugs than it is to get ivermectin or raw milk in Canada, and it's absolutely ludicrous. It's insane. Actually, you can do hard drugs, but you just can't do it out of a plastic straw because the plastic straw is also illegal.
I got a couple of more super chats here. Moonglow says, "Why is Harper helping Carney? Disturbing." Yeah.
Well, sorry, Clyde.
Go for it.
You got to remember this. A lot of these trends started under Stephen Harper. It's not like if we went back to the Harper era, it would be better. The Trans-Pacific Partnership wanted to kick the door wide open to China. I mean, his would-be successor, Maxime Bernier, in 2017, was very much a champion for kicking this country wide open to all sorts of Chinese capital and foreign ownership. It's not like Stephen was, I used to say, because when he went for public appearances, when he was campaigning, he wore a Canada sweater, and it was a zip-up sweater. You can go online and you can look it up. And it was never zipped up all the way. The zipper was always down past the Canada, and Canada was split in two. And I thought that is just so symbolic, because he started this process. He set record immigration levels. We never had immigration as high as Stephen Harper. Now, in retrospect, it looks reasonable because things have gone right off the rails over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
He was the foot in the door that Trudeau kicked wide open. So their alignment on a lot of these things does not surprise me. It's the same with the alignment on the Conservative Party. There's an interesting duality. When it comes to the United States, the foreign policy of the Trump administration, in many ways, not regarding trade, doesn't seem all that much different from the foreign policy of the Biden administration. In Canada, the foreign policy of the Conservative Party that they put on the record versus the foreign policy of the Liberal Party is basically not all that different. So there's this unity of direction when it comes to both opposition parties as to the destiny of Canada. They say different words, but the direction we've been heading in has been guided over the last 40 years, even before Harper, in the same direction. It's like a slowly declining slope, and then Trudeau, we fell off the curve. I don't know what that's called in statistics, but it's like we dove.
Flat line.
Yeah, well, flatline and then the decline. It's like, you know, when they ask you, how'd you go bankrupt? First slowly, then fast. We're in the fast part.
So Sandy Klein also adding to this, saying, Clyde, there are biometric vending machines in BC, have to scan palm print. So you might be, maybe I was wrong in correcting you. Perhaps there are vending machines where you can actually get hard drugs right out of the machines.
And just to Frank's point, you know, even before Harper, if you want to look at nation-destroying policies, you know, you go back to Jean Chrétien, and you know, 80% of our gold holdings was sold under Jean Chrétien, and then before Jean, you have Brian Mulroney, who brought in, you know, the GST, and he, you know, rebranded the GST. It was probably called something else, and brought in NAFTA that really, you know, undermined or systemically destroyed our manufacturing sector in Canada. You know, 80% of manufacturing has disappeared since, you know, NAFTA is brought in. And then you go before Brian Mulroney, you have Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who brought in supply management. And as you alluded to, 80% of family-owned farms have been routed from supply management. And, you know, he really, and, you know, a lot of people call Pierre Elliott Trudeau a liberal, but he was a communist NDPer. You know, and he ran as an NDP, and he knew that he would never, you know, win. So he switched and ran as a liberal. So, you know, this decline really started in like in the mid '60s, you know, or maybe early '70s of our economy, and you know, it gets to a point where you can't say that this is, you know, all done by accident and these people are just morons and they're completely incompetent. And it gets to a point where you have to come to the conclusion that it's done, you know, it's malice, it's done on purpose, and it's done to exert the most amount of pain on the population as possible without them having to revolt.
I'm just looking for a clip here because I wanted to illustrate a point. I guess if you want to keep on this topic, Frank, before I switch gears again.
No, continue. I was waiting for you to jump in. I don't want to.
Oh, okay. So I want to get back a bit to the anti-American sentiment stuff, and I think I found the appropriate clip. So this was the moment actually when Pierre Poilievre kind of lost me. And there have been a lot of moments where it was like he was, you know, when there was the 1 million person march against Soji and all this, you know, gender bending stuff, and parents were standing up. He was like late to the punch. He didn't want to say anything until I guess the focus group came out and said, oh, you should say something about that, even though every party leader was commenting on it on the day that it occurred. And, you know, these people were slandered and they were told that they were bigots and all this other stuff. But when the writ finally dropped and it went to the election, and I thought, all right, here's the chance. We've been hearing about this. We've been waiting for it. Pierre's going to come out. He's going to be a champion. Well, Carney's saying all this crazy stuff about elbows up. Pierre's going to come to the table and he's going to be the sensible guy. And he's going to say, you know,
the statesman, the diplomat.
The Americans have been our partners for such a long time. We shouldn't turn our back on them. Even though they're doing things that we don't like, we should be willing to come to the table and talk with them and blah, blah, blah. I thought that's where the rhetoric was going to go. No, it went into another direction entirely. And where did it go? It went at insulting Americans and finding historical things. He talked about how the Americans were, you know, late to the punch during the war, and we were so much more formidable. And, you know, whether people believe that's true or not, this is a part that he said.
Churchill said, though, you can always count on the Americans to do the right thing after exhausting all other possibilities. As Winston
So, I mean, as a person who is an American, I watched that and I thought, wait a second. Like, it's one thing to insult Donald Trump. It's one thing to insult the current administration, but to come out and make a blanket statement against Americans, that hit me hard. That hit me really hard. And I didn't know how to express it at first because I'm like, holy crap. I mean, I don't want the liberals to win, right? I don't want the liberals to win. But meanwhile, I'm like, the other alternative, the guy who's the choice other than the liberals, and don't tell me Max Bernier because that's just dumb. But he comes out and he insults me, and he insults anybody who falls in that category. And like, how are you get? Biden did a similar thing. He came out and he insulted Donald Trump's supporters, and that was like, even the media at the time when that happened, when he said something bad about Donald Trump's supporters, they're like, ooh, Biden, don't do that, even though they were completely on his side. Hillary Clinton did a similar thing when she ran against Trump. She came out with her basket of deplorables. Yeah, that's the one. And this is one of those things you just never do. You insult your adversary. You don't insult the people surrounding, because people are transient. They're with you and then they're not with you. And that was a moment where I was like, I don't know if I'm with you, man.
Well, man, there was this whole middle road that nobody explored. The middle road was, we had the greatest trade relationship in the history of the world. We're being political, so let's blow some smoke. The greatest trade relationship in the history of the planet. And in 10 years, the Trudeau government blew it up. Now, I know, the Canadian public, they're unhappy with Trump and they don't like the orange man. You'd phrase it a little bit differently. But, they're there with our capital. They provide this much of our trade. Just run down a whole pile of statistics, the nuclear umbrella. Just tell the truth about what America does for us by proximity and say, it's about time we sit down at the table and we try and repair that. Who could argue with that message? And they didn't even try it. They literally just went right to elbows up and insulting the Americans, which is why I think it's got to be a concerted plan. It tanks Canada. It sacrifices our people to try and drag America a little slower through this, what I would call it's like a domestic reformation with their relationship with the world. It's almost like they want to get into this second Monroe doctrine is where Trump, I think, wants to take it. The problem is it's already failed on foreign policy.
The Monroe doctrine
just basically says we're in our hemisphere. Leave us alone. We'll trade with the world. We'll sell our surplus to everybody else because we're still going to be the world's grain bread basket. We still got a lot of the potash and all these other minerals. So we're going to do business with the world, but we're going to be a fortified and protected continent. We're going to stay out of other people's business. We're going to recognize the spheres of influence of other nations in the world, and they're going to recognize ours. And I think that's where he started at. But events with Ukraine and events with the Middle East, in my mind, are really threatening to derail that hope. I mean, deploying nuclear subs and saber rattling with nuclear weapons is not what I think most independents voted for Trump for, which, by the way, I was thinking about this today as I was going about my business. Why do we in Canada, our polling companies, not track independents? You're liberal, you're conservative, you're NDP. There's no option. And the Americans have the Democrats, the Republicans, and this big sliver in the middle that decides elections called independents. That's what I think I am. I'd vote for anybody if I thought their ideas had a chance of improving my life in some way, because it's all I've got to exercise. And it might be a useless gesture, but it's what I've got. Why don't we do that? Where's independence? I think a lot of us at this here would describe ourselves as independently minded.
Well, independence is going out the window. We're consolidating. That's what we're in the process of consolidation. Then that's the other part that was so disappointing for me when it came to the conservatives. Insulting Americans. Yeah, that sucked. And I bit the bullet, and I don't like that, but I'm, and then as soon as we go back to Parliament, there was a very short sitting, and what did they do? They passed Bill C5. They justified it. Well, this is great because it'll be good once we're in power, because then we'll use it to do good things.
Do you know who the only person to push back? Do you know who the only person to push back on Bill C5 was as an MP or as a political party? The Green Party. Elizabeth May said that Bill C5 was another attempt for Ottawa to centralize power over the Canadian economy, and it should not be allowed. This was from Elizabeth May, and I completely agreed with her because she's correct. And I never agreed with Elizabeth May.
And she's the commie. she's a wino commie. It's crazy.
I don't know. There's a lot of people in this country who spun the Conservatives voting for C5 as a good thing. And I watched a bunch of that content, and I'm like, it's just spin. You guys are homers. You're on the home team. You're on the CPC team.
Yeah.
And you're just not telling the truth about it. And now we know it was one of those dividing lines. It's like people who are out there actually just trying to tell the truth, and people who are out there batting for the home team. It sucks all around. It sucked all around, and it still sucks, and it's going to suck even more because there's other bills, as I've covered in my videos, that are working their way through government now, which aren't going to do us any good either. Like the noose is tightening around the West. It's like the whole ship has to go down together, and nobody's going to get off it. And while we're dilly-dallying around having these premiers meetings and having these conversations, and we're all thinking inside the box, the noose from the Canadian Senate, the Governor General, and the government is tightening around our throats to deprive us of the sovereignty that's left to the provinces. And it sucks because we don't have a lot of time. This is the opportunity. Today is the historic moment.
Well, it just reminds me of one of Thomas Sowell's quote saying that people who enjoy meetings shouldn't be in charge of anything, and all these people do is these people too are in meetings.
Well, my wife says that to me all the time. She's like, because people are always trying to give me work. They're like, you should be premier, you should be prime minister, you should do all these things. And I always answer them like, why are you trying to give me a job? Like, I don't want to do any of that. And my wife says to me, you'd be terrible at it because you hate meetings. And I said, if I was actually doing the job, there would be a lot less meetings. We wouldn't be sitting around in meetings like we'd be out there. I'd be doing something else. I don't know what I'd be doing because you're right, man. Like if you enjoy that, if that's a way of life, if that's your career focus is focus groups, you shouldn't be in politics. But unfortunately, that's the type of people that politics attracts. Like it's the people who would be best suited to be there are never there. They don't get elected and they don't want to be there. It's almost like a litmus should be, do you hate it? Do you hate the concept? Do you hate the thought of being in public office? If you hate it with every fiber of your being, maybe you should consider a run. See,
the problem with politics is, good politics is really bad economics, and really good economics is bad politics. So if you had a candidate and came out and said, this is what we need to do to fix the country, they would never get elected. People would say, you're insane. Like, we don't want to do that. Too. And it's much easier for a guy to come out and promise the world, never deliver on anything, and then blame somebody else for their shortcomings. And people will be like, "Yay, we'll vote for him." Even though
Hayek wrote about this. That was the road to serfdom. You're just giving a synopsis of the book.
But that's a great book, and everybody should read it. And I reference it a lot. It's he's a Nobel Peace Prize winner for that book, and people call him. Everybody's saying, "Oh, Carney is this excellent economist," and I say, but Frederick Hayek said this is the road to serfdom. Who is more credible? And Mark Carney, a Keynesian who believes in modern monetary theory, or an Austrian economist who won the Nobel Peace Prize, Frederick Hayek. And they had an argument yesterday, and somebody said, "Oh, Mark Carney is." I'm like, you don't even know who Frederick Hayek is, and 6 months ago you didn't even know who Mark Carney was. So don't give it to me.
Hayek's best book is like this thick. Carney's book is this thick, and all he talks about in it is the value of printing money. Though, I'm telling you, it's a dry read. But if you want an impression of how he sees the world, there's no Main Street other than the word Main Street. He has no concept of it. The financial class and the central banks are everything to this guy. All solutions emanate from them, even when they cause the problem. He's not a good economist at all.
Well, what did he do when he was Bank of Canada governor? He came in, he slashed interest rates, and he expanded the currency supply by about 70%, which drove asset prices up and caused massive inflation in consumer goods. The price of a Big Mac went up about 65% over his tenure. And he said that because of me, like I led Canada through a crisis and we came out stronger on the other side. No, dude, all you did was inflated the currency supply, blew asset bubbles, and claimed victory, and hung your hat over the next guy, hoping that it doesn't blow back on you when shit hits the fan. You didn't do anything. You just exasperated the problem.
So the problem with this whole thing is that you can't really judge how a person's doing in a job when the product is compulsion. You're dealing with taxpayers' money. They're not voluntarily handing it over like in a marketplace where you're getting goods and you're doing this on a voluntary basis. When you're talking about printing money, it's not compulsion in the sense that it is robbery. You're actually just stealing the wealth that's already out there that people have already paid taxes on.
You're stealing future wealth. You're stealing wealth from people that haven't even been born yet. Because
my argument though is that there's no good determination on whether someone has done a good or a bad job. It's not clear to everybody when they don't actually have to compete in a place. They're either stealing people's wealth unbeknownst to the people that their wealth is being stolen from, or they're using compulsion to take it via the state. So if their policies fail, they can always blame it on some other factor. It's an obscure thing to most people because they don't understand economics, because the people in this audience that have been reading up on economics, the people in this discussion that have been reading up on economics, most layman is like, oh, well, the banker told me that, we need more money to do the thing. Like they don't get how these mechanisms work and what the repercussions of them are. Even Keynesian economic, professors don't quite see clearly what's going on. It's guys like Hayek, it's guys like Mises, Dr. Walter Block, who's been, preaching this from the hilltops, that actually get this stuff, and Ron Paul, who popularized all of this. This is it's an analysis that the lay person doesn't have access to.
So if politicians actually solved the problems, no one would ever vote for them again. If big pharma actually cured diseases, they would go bankrupt. If big banks actually pulled people out of debt, there would be a financial crisis. The whole system would collapse. So if Tom kills Jerry, the show ends. So the show must go on. The show must go on. It's all music, right? It's all game of musical chairs. But it's going to get to a point where the music's going to stop, the lights are going to go on, and there's going to be no chairs.
I did forget to mention Rothbard, but he's not as mainstream a name for most people. But yes, Rothbard was an amazing thinker in the space, and Dr. Walter Block was his student. So yeah, there it is.
It's funny because we talk about central banking, and I do it too. It's nomenclature. It's the way that we talk about these things. But in a way, which I'm going to try to parse here, central banking is not central. It's actually decentralized. So yes, you have a central bank, which power emanates from, and then you have the master bank, which is in the City of London, the Bank of England, which spawned all these ideas. But the power to create currency is actually decentralized. The banks have the ability to create money out of nothing, and they do it all the time. So whenever you get really close to somebody putting the meat on the bones, there was a...
So you're talking about, I guess, fractional reserve lending versus, M2 currency creation here, right?
No, I just think that nations are different nations, so there's a decentralization there. It's not one central bank of the world.
Nobody's talking about private banks, commercial banks actually increasing the currency supply through the mechanism of loan demand. When somebody comes in and wants a loan for a mortgage, they create that currency to fulfill that loan. That currency never existed until that person came in and wanted it. I think that's what I think that's what you're alluding to.
The
right?
Keynesians call that velocity. I love the
Yes.
terms that they've come up with for this stuff. So if the bank is lending out money that they don't have, they're allowed to do this. It's like $100 for every dollar is 100 to 1. So they can lend this money out as long as it's eventually supposed to come back to the bank, and then that's supposed to be the the velocity of it going expanding and contracting, but it's always only ever in one direction.
The interesting thing about creating money out of nothing, or I should say creating money at interest, so the central bank creates money out of a particular interest rate, is there's never enough money in circulation to go back. So the money supply has to inflate perpetually. There's no other way to go, and there's always going to be losers on the bottom rung.
Yeah.
But I think it's such a great power that if you have it and you've been raised in it, that's the other thing. People who get the top executive positions at the banks and these institutions, they don't get there by accident. There's a lot of nepotism. It's an insular club, and you get invited in at some point because they don't want ideological diversity. They want people to be committed to the status quo and to the system itself. And so if you want those top jobs, you get them. And there's actually I don't know if you guys watch Tucker Carlson, but my God, he is underserved right now. The last, I'd say 5 or 6 interviews he's done, they're on different subjects, but man, are they powerful. And he brings in, I've been trying to think of his name for the last few minutes. He's a character that I've known since, for decades. I've known his name, and I haven't followed his work directly, but he wrote a book on the Bank of Japan. And at one point, the value of parkland in Japan was greater than the value of all the land in California put together, but nobody was buying it. It was just this huge asset bubble, and then Japan burst. And he wrote books about why that happened, and he actually exposed all this stuff. And he talked very effectively about how, there comes a point when you get close to the truth, you kind of get offered a job. You get to go run a central bank, or you get to go be a big executive at TD. And if you turn it down, then you're blackballed. But you have an opportunity to jump in to the system and be a part of the system and take advantage of the system as it is, as long as you shut your mouth.
And Yuri Bezmenov did an excellent point of view on that. He said those who promote the system will be elevated to positions of power through mass media and public opinion manipulation, and those who refuse it will be character assassinated or lined up against the wall and shot. Those were his exact words.
We're experiencing that. We're absolutely experiencing that.
That's a fantastic interview for anybody that wants to. It's a bit of like, the problem is when guys talk about this stuff, when they write books like the Creature from Jekyll Island, or you get into that sort of stuff, it can go right over your head because it sounds so arcane and it sounds so complicated. But the reality of it is, it's this monopoly on money creation. Not even necessarily money creation. Like, you don't even have to create money. You just create debits and credits on a computer terminal. These guys don't want to surrender that power. It's everybody should watch that. I think that's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I pulled it up. His name is
Richard nobody wants to talk to guys like that. Like, Tucker's doing some incredible interviews with some really cool people that I, knew in my learning from 10 or 20 years. Like, it's nice to see them getting some attention. It's a shame he doesn't get, he only gets 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 views on a video. It's like, man, this should be bigger than Rogan, some of this stuff,
And the interesting thing about Japan, because this ties into what we're talking about, is Japan, after their crash, they went to basically 0% interest rates forever. And they stuck it there. And the real thought behind that was, we don't want people to lose their wealth. So we'll create a bubble, an asset bubble in the wealth that people had, and hopefully that they can maintain that. And then someday we'll work our way out of this environment. And they never have since the 1990s. It's been 0% interest rates in Japan forever. And it's really benefited the United States because Japanese, in spite of a bad economic situation brought on by their central bank, are industrious and work hard. And so they still do well in spite of all of this. If these measures weren't the case, there would have been a sharp decline, just like in the 1920s in the United States. A sharp decline, bounce right back. Everyone's right back to work and industrious and doing their stuff. Instead, a lot of the manufacturing left Japan. A lot of issues, lots and lots of issues, because of low interest rates artificially low interest rates for a long time, stopping people from losing their shirts.
Do you want an extremist point of view as to who should be setting interest rates? The free market.
The market, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the free market.
It's crazy that you call it an extremist point of view, because it is. If you suggest that on Fox News, you'll never be invited back ever again.
You wouldn't. And thinking that these central planners are smarter than the collective decisions of every single person that participates in a market, because that's what a free market is, right? The individual making a decision that's best for him or herself within a collective. And once you get like millions upon millions of people that are participating in the system, then you have a free market. And to think that central planners, a group of like 5 or 6 people that went to Harvard, think that they're smarter than everybody else, it's just asinine thinking.
Hubris.
Hubris will be our downfall. So I guess the question is, if we had the free market actually setting interest rates, the interest rates would never fall below the price of inflation. Because why would somebody buy a bond when they just lose in real terms because the value of their currency is depreciating? So if you actually want to stem inflation, they quote inflation of what, 2.5%. So we know, my formula of government numbers is divide or multiply by pi, whatever the narrative is. So they're telling us that it's 2.5%. So it's probably closer to 7%. So, interest rates have to go at least higher than 7% to actually stop this inflationary movement of rising prices. And will it cause problems? Of course it will. Will it cause defaults, bankruptcies? People will lose their homes? Yes. But the alternate situation is way worse. When I tell people that interest rates need to go to like double digits to stop this problem, they say, "Oh, you want people to lose their homes? You want people to lose their jobs?" And I just ask them, what would you rather have, a deflationary, recession or deflationary depression, where at least you can survive through it, where the middle class can actually still afford food? Or you have an inflationary depression and the middle class is obliterated, and people are eating zoo animals and you have massive casualties. If those are the two scenarios that we have, I would take a deflationary depression more than I would take an inflationary one, because an inflationary one is far worse and will cause far more pain.
Well, you look at where we're going with our strategy. Like, it started during the C-19 era, printing money with CERB, printing money with the business loans that never got repaid, all of these programs.
That's MMT. That's MMT.
Yeah. Well, and if you have a society that is experiencing declining productivity, which Canada is, that doesn't make things and doesn't sell things, which Canada is, at the same time as you have an inflationary super cycle, what do you think happens if the government is committed to printing their way out of that problem, but you're never going to make anything? Everybody's going to lose anyway. So a correction, as you're talking about, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, 1993, my dad bought a house and his interest rate was 13.25%. That would annihilate people right now, but you don't get there overnight, generally speaking, you don't get there overnight.
But the question is, at 13.5% or whatever it was, what was the price of that house? It was probably under 100,000. It's probably about 60,
120,000. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you all the way. It's just people think it can't happen, it won't happen, it shouldn't happen, can't be allowed to happen, but it's happened already. We survived. We're still here, and it led to one of the most prosperous times coming out of that between the mid 1990s and 2008 was a pretty booming time for the most part. until the big crash of 2008, which is a whole other, like it's boom bust cycle triggered by central banks for their purposes. Like there's no free market in money.
No, there's no free market in money. And what happens? The Austrians talk about this. So the Austrian economists, they talk about this idea of malinvestment, and no other economists are out there talking about this. What happens is when there's when something artificial comes into the market and manipulates it, people don't know how to act or behave in that marketplace. So what they do is they behave according to the stimuli that they're given. So for example, in Canada, they lower interest rates after the 2008 crisis, which they had already lowered interest rates under Harper before this. And there was a push into the real estate market. And why? Well, because people are looking at it and they're going, well, I'm losing all my money in inflation. If I put my money into a savings account, I'm going to lose the interest rate is less than what I'll lose to inflation. So I need to put my money into an asset. Most people don't want to toy around the stock market. They don't want to do all this other stuff. So they look at the most secure assets that are possible. Real estate. Everyone got into real estate. This is a malinvestment. It's a similar thing that happened, back in the late 1990s that led to the 2001 stock market crash. We all know it as the .com crash. There's all these people that were malinvesting in a thing, and it was because of outside stimuli. This happened. People were getting into. It was crazy. It was actually really crazy how much people were just willing to throw money at bullshit. So
anything
like
.com.
Anything with a .com, and they would say, well, we own the domain. And that was like the big selling feature. The other selling feature was, well, you don't even have a customer base.
NFT craze.
But it's very similar. But the big one sec, I'll let you jump in. But the one thing that was the big seller was, yeah, but you don't understand. We're about to go public, right? And that's the whole thing. NFT was exactly along those lines. It's malinvestment. And what do the Austrians talk about malinvestment? Well, there needs to be a market correction. The people who invest in things not illegitimately, but in a way that's just foolish, they need to lose their shirt. Let's just be honest. Like, you gotta lose the value that you've speculated a thing up to be, and then the market can correct. And not until then will the market correct, because any action because of this will be to prop up those people that are to stop them from losing their shirt. You're just kicking the can down the road, and more people are going to lose their shirt in the process. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that, all that malinvestment from 2000 and 2008 and, 2016 and 2020, that trade hasn't unwinded. That trade is still there. There's a massive growing. Yeah, there's a massive asset bubble, and there's a bond bubble that has, the real estate bubble has inflated off of, because the bond market is the biggest market on the planet, right? It's 100 times the size of the stock market. So everybody's talking about the stock market as, watch the stock market. No, watch the bond market. Watch what the 10-year yield is doing. Watch what the, long-term interest rates are doing. Because the bond market dictates every other market, and it managed to, inflate a real estate bubble, inflate a stock market bubble, and that trade, I believe, when that unwinds, is going to cause havoc greater than a nuclear exchange between superpowers. Because when you talk about the bond market seizing up, you're talking about just-in-time delivery gone. You're talking about transportation. When you don't have access to credit, when you can't ship your products, you can't buy your products, you can't fill your stores. That is the scenario. That is the situation that when this trade unwinds is going to happen, and it's going to cause it's going to be a mass casualty event, and people are probably familiar with Gregory Mannarino. If you're not, you can probably check him out on YouTube. He's he's pretty prominent on YouTube, and he talks about, you know, debt and the human bubble. And, you know, there's a strong correlation between the rise of debt and the rise of human population. So it's just, you know, makes sense if there is a correction in the debt market, then there would be a correction in human population as well. And, you know, you go back.
We're already looking at a crash in human population as we speak.
But this debt bubble really, spiked to the upside when we ended Bretton Woods in 1971, right? And then had the ability for central bankers to create currency out of thin air in a fiat system that's not actually tied to a physical asset, which is gold. And then you saw population spike. So if that trade reverses and that this whole system unwinds, then there is going to be chaos. And there is going to be mass casualties.
So one of the things I've talked about at length before, and I haven't really spoke about this recently, is the idea that conservation, let's not put it in the term of conservatism, but conservation. And I think that a lot of, you disappeared. I think that a lot of environmentalists ought to get on board with this whole idea, right? Environmentalists need to get on board with this, because this is the idea of, sovereign debt is the idea of borrowing into the future and using resources now rather than not using them and saving them for a future date. The advent of debt and the ability to just borrow into the future, most people see it as like an obscure construct, right? It's not an actual thing that's immediate in their day-to-day. But they always preach about, like, let's not use the planet too much so that we're depleting all the resources. Well, what do you think you're borrowing against? You're borrowing against resources that will be mined and then consumed in the future, but you're consuming them now. You're consuming the product of that, the innovations or the product of the actual hard work that people will have to do in the future in order to consume in the immediate. You're borrowing against that. So later, in a later date, people are going to have to pull stuff out of the ground, make products out of it, and then sell them in the market in order to pay for those things. You're just increasing the amount of production, the amount of things that need to be made, the amount of resources that need to be consumed in order to consume that now. You're just doing it down the road. You're just kicking the can down the road. And environmentalists, I think, if you really want to get them on board with all of this, express this and somehow convince them and do it in a way that's not like, I don't know, a Greta Thunberg thing, but a convincing way to say, listen, debt is consumption. You just kicking it down a couple of generations from now, but it's gonna ramp up, and it's gonna be because of what we're doing now. If you want to conserve nature and resources and all this other stuff, we need to wind down on what we're just spending BS on. It's unfortunate that all these environmentalists are all socialists and are happy willy-nilly to just spend money, usually because they don't understand how this works.
I think you have to draw a distinction between popular environmentalism and people who are actually environmentalists. And I've seen a very visceral example of this. And I know I've talked about this with you before, and I know I'm repeating myself somewhat, but when I
got to repeat the gospel, man, you got to tell people over and over. It's how you get it out there.
When I was running in 2019, I went to that David Suzuki Foundation debate, a climate change debate, environmentalism debate. And it was this whole, blue dot, water planet, blah, stuff. And I go in there, and I'm thinking, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to completely poo-poo the entire climate change narrative. And I'll be lucky if I don't get hung from the rafters by these people. And so there was 300 people there, and I remember sitting on the stage, and I knew exactly what I had to do, and I did it, and was shocked by every single time I spoke, I got applause from the entire room. And I remember the Green candidate and the NDP candidate were both spooked. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. And so I went through the debate, and then afterwards, you're talking to people. And what I found out is that the people that were gathered there were far more concerned about legitimate environmental problems and they don't feel represented. The climate change debate clever little catchphrase, it sucked out all the oxygen in the room, and all the other causes are lost. And there's so much BS, like the whole mass death of the coral reefs. I mean, we're celebrating, I think, the 4th year in a row of record growth of coral reef. It's far more resilient than mainstream environmentalism would have us believe. But what I found is in the crowd, you had these PhDs, you had these trained people in environmental sciences, and they didn't want to talk about climate change and CO2. They wanted to talk about anything but that. And I was like, I was blown away because I didn't see that coming at all. As a thinking man, I did not see that coming at all. And I remember the Green candidate and the NDP candidate, they scurried for the door and off they went. I was stuck there until the place emptied out because they'd actually heard a different idea. Because the Liberal, the Conservative, the Green, and the NDP were all saying variations on the same thing. The questions that were developed by the David Suzuki Foundation were all about climate change. It was this rote copy. It was dry. It was boring. It was stale. And I just threw a grenade into it. And they loved it. So I think, just to the point, I think there's a huge stream in environmentalism that is actually thinking the way that you are and thinking the way that we are, but they're not represented by popular environmentalism. They're not represented by political environmentalism. They're just on their own without a voice.
Well, those people are activists, right? And activism is just, a funny word for, to give useless people meaning, right? That's all activists are.
Well, they're good at it. They have slogans. This is why I came up with the one slogan. It was ecological, like an emphasis on the logical part, not environmental, because that's the idea. Like these environmentalists, they're mental. We want to be logical about ecology and about like actually addressing the issues that people genuinely have concerns for. But here's the problem: if we all become poor, nobody's going to care about the environment. Everyone's going to care about just their subsistence level, everything. So the number one thing is to not become a poor country. If you care about the environment,
we're already there. Like 25% of the population lives below poverty lines, and according to Food Banks Canada, and then 25% of the population lives, if not more, lives paycheck to paycheck. So we're already, basically a third world country. We definitely have a third world government. So, yeah, and a lot of people they shit on other third world countries, but you can go to I can go to a third world country right now and have better quality services, better roads, better healthcare than what Canada can provide at a fraction of the cost. So, our social programs are so expensive, and the quality that is being delivered is so poor, yet people think that we're this prosperous nation when we're really not. We're really not. We're no different than some African colony. The only difference is that we've managed to pair ourselves geographically to the United States. If the United States wasn't there, we'd basically be an African colony, a resource colony.
And to your point, the majority of Canadians don't even know it, and that's the thing. We are among the nations, we might be the most propagandized and delusional about our own self-identity. We're hubristic. We are, a phrase I came up with the other day is we're the biggest shoulder chip ever carried by an inferiority complex with no sense of self-identity. So our healthcare system sucks balls. Like it's terrible. It's expensive.
Unless you want MAID, then it's 30 minutes for it's free.
Unless you want MAID. Even that, I'm sure they'll find a way to screw that up. You won't even be able to commit suicide properly. But you have the right to wait. I just read a lawsuit that was covered by Global News. I think it's the Halton Region Health Services are being sued because a kid went in there with acute pneumonia and the conditions and was just left in the waiting room, basically getting worse and worse and worse as the hours ticked by. And then a half day later, 3/4 of a day later, the doctor's like, oh yeah, he's in bad shape. And then he dies. And it's like, who's responsible for that? It's not even a matter of responsibility. It's the call is always, what's the government going to do? We need more funding. funding's not going to fix a damn thing. If money fixed things, the reserves would have water and purpose. Forget about just clean water. Purpose. Healthcare would be.
What was it during COVID? The big thing in British Columbia was we don't have enough hospital beds, and so that they, we increased the funding. That was their big thing, and then what was it? There was a freedom of information request somebody made. Well, after 2 years, how many hospital beds were increased? Not a single one.
And you know what's funny? You know what's funny about our healthcare system, right? The left likes to shit on, so-called trickle-down economics, saying that it's insane and that's not how the market works. But when it comes to government-controlled, sectors like healthcare, they just think that trickle economics is going to work. If they just dump a whole bunch of money into the top end of the system, then it'll magically make its way to the bottom end, to the front line.
That's the exact argument for economic stimulus as well. It's trickle down economics.
Yeah, when likely less than 10% of the initial funding will ever make it to the front line, and 90% of it will be eaten up by bureaucracy and red tape, and stolen away or pissed away. So the solution is always more competition, right? That is the solution. If you eliminate the monopoly and allow for free market competition, then you can establish a market, and then you can allow competing ideas and let the best idea win. So when it comes to healthcare, that is the solution, is allowing for more competition. And as soon as you say something like this, everybody brings in but America, and that is the Canadian complex. As soon as you criticize Canadian healthcare, they jump on you and say, oh, what do you want? Americanized healthcare? Like, there's 193 countries in the world, and America is the only other country that offers healthcare. No, you can have like a better system, because the way America's healthcare system works is kind of like our telecom works. There's like 5 or 6 different companies that control the insurance aspect of it, and you have an oligopoly, right? So that's no more a free market than our monopoly controlled.
It's a third-party payer system. It's awful. It's convoluted, and the people that win in that scenario are the bureaucrats, the office workers, and the lawyers. You're absolutely right.
So I don't want a monopoly just as much as I don't want an oligopoly. I want a free market system. So let's crack that open. But the problem is that people don't really like free market competition, and you're always going to have a group of people that are going to try to collude with each other to control a market, and then get government to jump in and protect their market. So that is the problem that we're fighting. So if we do want better healthcare, we need to embrace free market capitalism.
One of the okay, so to your point, let's accept for a minute. Let's just for the sake of argument, you can build a platform with people using this talking point. Let's accept that we all agree, even if we don't, that there should be universal payer, single payer healthcare. Okay. So you want universal coverage for everybody. Okay, fine. Can we look at other countries that do that and how they do it? Because if you look at other OECD countries that are delivering universal healthcare, they have private components. They have competition inbuilt. They deliver better healthcare, cheaper, with the private competition built into the system. Everybody's covered, but things are run differently. Canada is so weird because we're obsessed with this idea. And it's like I just said, it's so frustrating to me. It's such a choice of discipline to not swear about it uncontrollably, because we have talking points, these delusional talking points, like the only comparable is the United States, which is itself a terrible system managed in a completely different way. There's lots of variety to choose from. You can reach into a grab bag of Europe and you can take your pick of individual systems and how they're managed in those governments, and you could piece out what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and how we could do it better. A private component is not the end of universal payer. Maybe you want the end of universal payer. Fine. You want competition that way? Fine. But for those who don't, let's just embrace reality. You can have universal single payer with a private component in your system. Everybody's still covered. Do you know I blew minds with that in 2019?
That's two-tier. That's basically two-tier.
But what's wrong with
we have a two-tier? We have a two-tier system.
So
we have hear me out. We have a two-tier system here. You get denied service, or you wait too long, and then you go to the United States of America and you get your service there. That's our two-tier system.
Well,
it's broken, it's messy, it's awful. The other systems that you're talking about, they have integrated with that, with their own private medical. They've integrated with other countries' medical systems. So if you can't get it, you're in Germany and you can't get it in Germany, and you got to go to the Netherlands to get the service, they'll pay for it. They'll make it a thing. These are all things to discuss. I mean, I'm not a big like socialistic, like let's go towards a socialist thing, but why not explore these ideas as you're discussing right here?
Why are we turning down the tax dollars? So every single year, upwards of 50,000 Canadians go to the United States alone to seek medical care. They also go overseas to Germany and other places like you're highlighting in numbers that I'm not familiar with, but I'm sure it's significant, just like the United States. So they go down there after they've paid their income taxes and their sales taxes and their excise taxes and their property taxes and every other bullshit fucking tax, pardon my French, that we pay the whole way through life up here. They then take their after-tax money and they go down there and they spend it to save their lives. Now, if you're a pure pragmatist who believes in our socialized medicine, why are we saying no to collecting the tax revenue on those dollars? We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. If you're a greedy socialist prick, we could be making money off these people, selling them care right here. Because if they can't get it here, they're going to leave and get it anyway. So why aren't we selling it to them? It doesn't make any sense from a humanities standpoint. It doesn't make any sense from an economic standpoint. Like, why do we do this monopoly? Like, everything with Canada is a cartel monopoly.
I guess the logical conclusion that you have to come to is that, these socialists are retards that hate economics and hate humanity. That's the only thing that we can, draw a line to. Why don't we want to collect this money and improve our economics? They don't understand economics. Why do we want to, call for humanity? They hate humanity. But, one of the point is, if you take a look at, I believe it's Finland, in the 1990s, they had a universal payer system, and they had a real estate system very similar to Canada is now. It was a bubble. It burst. It collapsed. They were no longer able to fund their universal payer system, and then naturally a two-tier system came where you're able to get private primary care, health care. That wasn't covered by the government. You had private insurance that you could buy, and it drastically improved the universal system by reducing wait times and introduced technology that people were willing to pay for, that would buy through the private system, that eventually made its way into the public system. So again, free markets actually improved the government system through competition, but it wasn't something that it was offered. It was forced through the free market because they had to go through pain through a collapsing real estate market that would actually open up their medical system. And that's something that we need to happen. That needs to happen here. Decentralize our medical system and go completely free market. That would never happen. At least move in that direction, right? And offer a two-tier system where I can opt out of OHIP or whatever provincial single payer system that I'm forced to pay with, and all the taxes that go along with it. The average Canadian pays what, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a year, or its tax obligations are about $9,000 a year to cover our socialized healthcare. If I can opt out of that and actually buy primary private care insurance, I would totally do that, and I would see why people wouldn't do that. but at least give me the option to do it. To say that I'm not allowed the option, and the only thing that I can do is I can be forced onto the system, and you're going to steal my tax dollars and say how much it's going to benefit me. Well, if it's going to benefit me, why are you forcing it onto me? Why can't I have that choice? We're not even allowed that choice, and I think that is the problem here. Give us the choice.
I hate the concept of asking the government for options. I guess this is the American in me that refuses to accept the fact that these are not just things that are being imposed on us. You know what I mean? These are our rights. It's our right to pursue happiness. It's our right to want to, it's our right to protect ourselves. It's our right to homestead. It's our right to keep our property. All of these things, Canadians constantly, I hear it all the time, and it drives me nuts. The concept of we should be allowed to, just hearing those words, we should be allowed to. No, it's your right. It's your right to. These rights should not be infringed. Now, again, we get into the conversation of rights, especially when you get into healthcare. People say healthcare is a right. Well, how is that a right? Like, there's a concept of positive rights, negative rights. It gets messy because people don't understand the idea between the two.
So here's another.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, here's another extremist view. Nothing that requires the labor of others is a right.
That's it. So the difference between a negative right and a positive right. So a positive right being something that you get something. You get something as a right. Whereas not being infringed upon is actually a right. So like not having somebody come to you and force you to do a thing, or compel you to do or say or whatever. This is the idea. You run into a problem when people say that a healthcare is a right, because healthcare is a service that another person provides. So at some point, you have to compel somebody to do that, whether you like that or not. That's the inevitability of it. And that becomes a problem. It becomes an issue, because now you're infringing this right infringes on somebody else's right. So when we work with the Socratic method, it negates the perceived right at all. So getting a service, it can never be considered a right. Being left alone is a right. You have the right to be left alone. If you want to be left alone entirely and go into the woods and not experience anything, that's your right as well.
And if you take a look at it, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they don't say life, liberty, and happiness. You don't have the right to happiness.
No,
you have the right, but you have the right to pursue the happiness, right? I understand that pursuit of happiness was added because of property rights were originally tried to put in, and that would be an infringement on other people's rights, so they had to change it to the pursuit of happiness. But they didn't say happiness; they said the pursuit of happiness, right? So you don't have the right to be happy, but you have the right to pursue happiness. And it's the same thing with healthcare. You don't have the right to healthcare, but you have the right to pursue having healthcare. You have the right to pursue education, but you don't have the right to education. You don't have the right to a house. You have the right to have the ability to buy a house, but all of these perceived rights they're false. And really the only right that people have is, your right to life, your right to liberty, and
So what's the Canadian phrase? It's life, liberty, and security. Am I getting that right?
Probably maple syrup.
Just shorten it to security.
And hockey.
Yeah. So security is a bad one, because that's a service, right? You don't have a right to security, but you definitely have a right to your own, making your own security. And this is where Canada infringes on that. And this is where I differ with the Canadian sentiment, and I definitely go with the American sentiment on this one. The Second Amendment is your right to security. You provide it to yourself. You provide your own security. The government is not in charge of security. Again, it's great. It's great that police services all exist. It's great that all these other things exist. But, when seconds matter, the police are minutes away. And that's, at the end of the day, you need to be able to protect yourself. I'm not saying you should be allowed to protect yourself. That's your right. You need to be able to, and that should be facilitated. It should be facilitated by the market, where you can go and you can purchase things that you can protect yourself with.
And what did the founding fathers say about liberty and security, right?
Actually, I think I have. I think
it's Ben Franklin who talks about trading liberty for security, or it's not even security.
We'll have neither, and we'll lose both. Or something.
And it's not even security; it's a false sense of security. They're not even providing you with security; they're providing you with the idea of security, and they never fulfill it.
Here it is. I tweeted this out actually just the other day. For those who keep looking to the government for guidance, snap out of it. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. That was Benjamin Franklin. Now,
and they will lose both.
Yeah, so that's another quote. I think that was Thomas Paine that said it that way. It's been repeated through, like, with the group of them have all said it in very different ways, but I agree with all of them. Yeah, if you're going to trade your liberty for security, not only you're not going to get it, but you don't deserve it. You're undeserving of it because you're a serf, right? You're joining the serf class, and you're not willing to put up the work to secure yourself.
And if you take a look at COVID, right, the stay home, stay safe, that entire messaging was trading liberty for a false sense of security.
That's right.
And Canadians,
and people were very willing.
And they were very willing. And I always tell people say, who's the greatest threat to Canada? And, you said earlier, Mark Carney was right with, China, but, I fundamentally believe, the biggest threat to Canada are Canadians themselves. 30% of the population was willing to snitch on their neighbors. They'd be the same people that would be willing to load, people up on a government boxcar, if the government, gave them a little bit of authority and power to do that. And then you have another, half of the population that would sit back silently and let it happen. So then you have 80% of the population was easily manipulated against the 20% of the population that stood, again, Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, against liberty, freedom, and the wanting to have that. And I guess the welfare of humanity is the alibi of tyrants, and when those with honey words by evil minds persuade the mob, great woes befall the state. And that is exactly what we saw. People were more than willing to trade their liberties away for a false sense of security. And it was in 2020 when I came to the conclusion that Canada is done. When you have this amount of people that are willing to embrace authoritarianism, how can you save a country that the biggest obstacle is not the government, but it's the enablers that are giving the tyrants the power? And that is, I guess, the question that I've been wrestling myself with ever since.
A lot of liberty-oriented people have left since then. They left at that time. They've made plans to leave and have left. Many people are viewing the current circumstances and are making those plans as well. It's not a good sign. It's not a good sign, because that it's like the brain drain. If enough liberty-oriented people leave, because of it just exacerbates it and puts it in a more dire circumstance. Now, we've been going for nearly 3 hours, so do want to let everybody know that we are going to, I'm not sure if the two of you guys can join in the Discord afterwards, but the tradition on Fridays is after the conversation on YouTube and now on Twitter. We're both on Twitter and YouTube. After that takes place, we head over to the Discord server. It's a private server where people can join in, and you can jump into the conversation with us. Voice and video chat. It's fantastic. It's the only reason why we send people there is because the voice and video conferencing is really good and it's easy to get in. left the link in the description in the in the chat. People can check out that link, get over there, get in there. Make sure that you're subscribed to Frank Vaughan's channel, as well as his X and Gov.exe, Kevin here, his X account. Make sure you're subscribed. Those are in the description down below as well. Before we get out of here, I did want to bring up Frank Vaughan has a terrible, terrible keyboard now because...
I'm sorry you're hearing that noise. Sorry about that.
No. That's not what prompted me. I wanted to bring this up all night because you apparently you have RGB that you can't turn off. I wanted to give you
you can't change the color. It's like it's this rainbow. Like, look at this. You can make it flash and you can make it do all kinds of things, but it's stuck in this rainbow color.
You got to just turn it off.
I can't even turn it off. It won't let me turn it off.
Yes, you can. I'll tell you exactly how to do it right now. Hold down the function key and hit the arrow key down about like 4 times.
Yeah, but hang on. Okay, yeah, all right, you're right.
The lights went away. The lights went away. Now you don't have the
light. I need the light. I sit in dimly lit places.
You need keycaps that are not black, all black. Might I recommend maybe some keycaps like this? I'm a keyboard dork, by the way. I build keyboards in my yeah. So keycaps like this you can buy right on Amazon. They're fantastic. These are PVD key. I think they're PVD keycaps. Type of
nice
plastic.
Keyboard.
It is a very nice keyboard. This isn't even my nice keyboard. I have one that has ceramic keycaps, these are all custom made switches. I have another one with custom made switches, aluminum.
Dude, that's
case,
a road I want to go down. I want to go down the keyboard road, but I don't want to spend the money going down that road.
Well,
so I've been a cheapskate.
There's no going down the road without doing the money thing. Yeah, you get into mechanical keyboards. You're sitting down for hours. You're lubricating switches. You're swapping springs out. It's money. It's stupid. We all have our stupid hobbies that we really get into. Mine's keyboards. That's one of my hobbies. So I just wanted to put that out there. There is worse things, but when you get into the keyboard hobby, you will realize you don't even want LEDs. You don't want them. It's tacky and you're happy without it.
All right.
All right.
Frank Canada, Sasquatch. Frank Canada isn't going to provide you a keyboard. They never have. We never have. Where's my free keyboard? I want my state funded keyboard, please.
After the LGBT or the RGB. There you go. That's it. It's rainbow. You got the rainbow one there. So I don't know if you guys are available to jump in the Discord. I'm going to be jumping in there. Link is in there in the description. But
yeah,
I want to thank you guys for coming out. Kevin, thanks for coming out. Amazing to have you. You've got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Austrian economics, central banking, CBDCs, the gold stuff, all of that stuff. So we'll have you on to talk more about all of that.
Good to
Thank
finally
you so
meet
much.
you too, man.
Yeah,
you know, we've been meeting each other.
Yeah, we've been following each other for a while, but it's the first time that we've
Twitter even gets involved sometimes and stops me from following you, and vice versa.
But you know what? I've never actually seen your post pop up on my newsfeed. I don't see it, even though I follow you. I don't see it.
Yep, isn't that awesome?
Sucks.
Rarely see yours.
So I actually have to look up your name and actually go and find you so I can like it and repost your comments. But yeah, I don't see your posts. I'm sorry to say.
If I want to see somebody's posts more, I comment on a bunch of their posts in a short period of time, and then the algorithm goes, "Oh, you like that guy? Okay, let's show more of that." That's just how I do it.
It's good to put a face with the account, because I don't think I think I might have seen a video. You don't do a lot of video content. You do interviews, right?
I do. yeah, I have a YouTube feed, but there's only like 7 videos, and it's all, nothing is my face. But I've done a few interviews with a few commentators, here and there. Candace from True North and whatnot. But other than that, not too much video interviews. Other than I think Clyde had me on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, so it's been like 7 months since then. So other than that, yeah, I generally just stick.
Clyde connects everybody. He's a good man.
I try to, man. I do my best
You play
to
a
connect
good role,
people.
man, and it's needed. Yeah, it's needed.
Well,
What
thank
do is
you. I
needed.
appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Some people like to play nice with others. Some people don't. But I learned that along the way, and everyone who does play nice gets to keep coming back. And that's the idea. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Just as long as we don't sue each other for treason.
Can you even do that in civil court? Wow, that's a whole other conversation.
All right, guys. For those that are joining us in the Discord, we'll see you in a few moments. For those that are not, we'll see you probably on Tuesday. It's a holiday. I'm a parent. My kids and my wife just got back from Japan, so I'm going to spend this holiday weekend. It's called Family Day for a reason here in BC. I'm going to spend that with them. So we'll see you all on Tuesday if we don't see you tonight. Everybody, thanks for coming. Hasta luego.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks.